Wow. It's done, guys. It's over. It's over. It's actually over. Which is positively insane. I am so shocked and surprised by this. I truly am. I did not see this coming at all. At all. And in fact, I don't think that anybody saw this coming at all. I really am shocked. In a really good way, though, I must admit. You know, oftentimes people say things like, oh, I'm shocked and surprised. This time, I really mean it. I really am. So, Wizards of the Coast sent out a cheeky little update today on the OGL. Very cheeky little update. Basically capitulating on every single point and walking back every single change. That's the headline news. That's the headline. Hey, Type C. Hey, Shield Wall. This is absolutely insane. We are not the bad guys, Merc Time. In fact, we're very much the good guys. And in fact, Wizards of the Coast surprisingly showing what I would say backbone for a company in deciding to walk back a ton of insane changes. So, okay, so what's going on? So, if you guys remember, the Open Gaming License is a license that Wizards of the Coast have that allow other content creators to basically make content for Dungeons and Dragons. And this is something that a ton of different businesses rely on in order to create content for the world's greatest role-playing game, aka the biggest role-playing game, right? It's got the biggest audience. It's really vital to the fortunes of a lot of companies. And Wizards of the Coast, very recently, just this month, walked it back, and they made a ton of different changes to the Open Gaming License that had a lot of creators very, very frightened, very, very scared. And there's been a ton of criticism of it. The community have been extremely critical. Third-party content creators have been shaking in their boots, and I mean that really, really, like literally. Tons of them moved over to other different systems. Paizo came up with their own license called the Org. Free Leagues, all these different companies have all come out now. Like, there was a mutiny, basically, in the role-playing game community as everyone turned against Wizards of the Coast. Well, today, the absolute most insane news has occurred. Wizards of the Coast have basically walked it back. They're doing a reverse. They're doing a reverse. They're like, you know all that stuff we did? Forget about it. Forget about it. It never happened. Oh, thank you very much for the donation there, Eric. How can I trust you without clown makeup? Also a huge win. Unfortunately, guys, I did not have time to put on clown makeup today because this literally just dropped. Like, this literally dropped just about half an hour ago. This is super duper new. Crushed beneath the weight of Legion, says Dollface. Get wrecked, Wizards of the Coast. I think that this has been an absolutely huge win for the community. I think that we've come together in a really big way. And I'd said this earlier on, I think I said this last week, that I was really surprised and really heartened by how unanimous the community were and how vocal the community were about how much they did not like these changes. And this is the result. Like, this is the result. Wizards of the Coast have literally done the impossible. They have done the impossible. I never thought this would even be possible for them. I mean, guys, come on. You all know what it's like whenever a corporation makes these big decisions. Executives are trying to push through things, and then their back goes up against the wall. The community says no. Bam. They start insisting that they can't change anything. They offer some performative capitulations, but this time they've just walked it all back. They're no longer going to revoke the Open Gaming License. We're going back to square one. We're going back to zero. And not only that, but they're actually opening up a ton of the existing Dungeons and Dragons content into the system reference document, which will basically put it into Creative Commons. So they're actually going further and opening up the game, which is a huge move. Like, we're going from everything is awful to what? That's absolutely insane. So we're gonna go over the announcement in a second. I'm just letting people filter in because I just saw this. I just saw this. Now, let's see. The Redneck Gamer says, honestly, this isn't walking back. Putting the SRD in its entirety onto the CCL is the smartest move they could have made. This isn't a promise. It is something they have done past tense. That might be the case. Honestly, I think that this was huge. I think that this is absolutely huge. Not only, I think it sets an excellent precedent. Now, there's more to this, right? This isn't like entirely like, woo, yay. Okay, there's a lot more to this. Like, for example, I think that we need to remember what's occurred. But we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about all of that because this is massive. DB says everyone else needs to still hold off on their D&D Beyond subs if they decide to go back to that platform. Make it hurt a little bit more. D&D Beyond subs is a huge point that DB makes, and I think it's a very good point as well. I actually think that this was the most important thing that happened. So whenever Wizards originally announced the OGL changes and everybody kind of like lost their minds a little for good reasons, there was a huge movement within the community to begin canceling D&D Beyond subs. These are subscriptions to the online platform D&D Beyond. And it was a massive movement, and I think the last time we heard, the last number I saw, it was in the tens of thousands of people had canceled their subs. I actually think that was a ton of lost money for Wizards of the Coast, and is the reason why we're seeing the walk back in the way, because it showed that the community were serious, right? That this wasn't some sort of performative gesture. Whenever we heard about the leaks, about the internal discussions within Wizards of the Coast, the initial decision, the initial response from the executives at Wizards of the Coast and at Hasbro was the wait and see, was basically like batten the hatches down and just let this all blow over. And I think that is the general response that you see from companies whenever there's a massive pushback from the community. And often they're right to do so in the sense that it does often blow over. These things can kind of burn themselves out. But not this time. Not this time. There was an actual, something actually occurred. People actually spoke with their wallets, and they managed to put D&D Beyond in a pretty precarious position, I believe. So I think that was massive, and I think that has really forced the hands of the executives. Let's see here. Merc Type 8 says Wizards of the Coast are done. So people are obviously still very, very annoyed. But let's go through the actual announcement from Wizards of the Coast, and then I want to get your opinion on what you guys think about Wizards of the Coast and whether or not you think you could ever trust them again. I mean, I've got an opinion on that, but I'm gonna leave that for now. Too little, too late, says Hobby Cathartic. Bring back 3.5th edition, says Merc Type 8. Well, I mean, it's to be honest, I actually think that they were concerned that a similar situation was going to occur, right? I'm sure that there's got to be some people over there at Wizard of the Coast who still remember 4th edition and the dark days that occurred. So we're going to dip in here. We're going to dip into the announcement, this absolutely crazy announcement, honestly. We're going to look at it here. Okay, let's do this. So here we go. So this was literally posted. It was posted 2 hours ago by Kyle Brink. Kyle Brink is the executive producer of Dungeons and Dragons. They made this post on D&D Beyond. This seems to be D&D Beyond is like where they have decided to put all of their announcements about the OGL, which was a little bit. It's like they've pushed it off the main screen, right? It's often been kind of hidden away in here. But in any case, so Kyle Brink is talking here about the OGL 1.0A. 1.0A is the one we like. Okay, so for anyone who's confused, we like the OGL 1.0 and the Creative Commons. Creative Commons is fine. Now, they're saying here, Kyle Brink is talking about the playtest feedback. There was recently an OGL 1.2. 1.2 was kind of created in response to a lot of criticism of the 1.1 that everybody hated. 1.2 was then created as like a kind of a gesture to the community of like, oh, sorry. And honestly, it wasn't very good. So I did not like 1.2. I think 1.2 had a ton of problems, and it looks like everybody else agrees. Huzzah! Crypto Kev, thank you very much for the donations there. 10 Discourse Minis memberships. Thank you very much for that. I really appreciate that. Thank you. That's massive. That's huge. Okay, so here's the playtest feedback. Kyle Brink has reported over 15,000 people have filled out the survey. 15,000 people, which is a fair amount of people, honestly. It's all the power game. It's all the DMs making their voice known. Okay, so here's what the response was. 88% of feedback, they do not want to publish tabletop role-playing game content under the OGL 1.2. Okay, so third-party content creators, 88% of them would not publish under OGL 1.2. 90% say that they would have to change some aspect of their business to accommodate 1.2, which is totally true. 1.2 had a ton of different onerous clauses. It changed things substantially for businesses from OGL 1.0, so I'm not surprised to hear that they feel like they would have to change their business in some way to accommodate. 89% are dissatisfied with the deauthorizing of OGL 1.0. So what this means, the deauthorizing was essentially, okay, if you were someone who had been making content for Dungeons and Dragons since like the mid-2000s, you were making it under what was called the OGL 1.0. This was the original open gaming license created in the year 2000. And if you were making content under that, and it had been released under that, you could continue to sell it under the OGL 1.0. OGL 1.2, however, made it so that if you wanted to continue to sell that content or if you wanted to make any alterations to that content, you would have to update it to be under the new 1.2. And Wizards of the Coast were basically insisting that 1.0 was getting deauthorized. So apparently 89% of respondents are dissatisfied with that. 86% are dissatisfied with the draft VTT policy. The draft virtual table, this is the virtual tabletop policy. This was actually, so okay guys, I'm a little bit annoyed. I'm not gonna lie. I had written a video that was like pretty in depth and really, I really focused on the virtual tabletop policy. I actually think that the virtual tabletop policy is one of the worst things. I actually think it's really pernicious and probably like almost as bad as the old OGL thing. In fact, I think it's all up there, right? It's all kind of part of the same goo. And now I think I just have to scrap that video. So there we go. I mean, I'm kind of happy though at the same time. So they said that 86% are dissatisfied with the draft VTT policy. There was all sorts of crazy stuff in the virtual tabletop policy. There's elements like if you have any sort of spell effect in your virtual tabletop. So this is like Roll20, for example, or Foundry VTT. If they have like spell effects, then they're not treated as a virtual tabletop. They are now a video game, according to Wizards of the Coast, and they can't exist. You're not allowed. You have to license it directly with Wizards of the Coast. It was a pretty poor policy, honestly. And a lot of the worst parts about the OGL 1.2 were actually being snuck in through the Trojan horse of the virtual tabletop policy. But it looks like 86% of people are dissatisfied with that. So I'm really glad to hear that. 62% are satisfied with including the SRD content in Creative Commons. And the majority of those who were dissatisfied asked for more SRD content in Creative Commons. So Creative Commons is not the be-all, end-all, in my opinion. The Creative Commons isn't like perfect, because what it means is that you have to kind of deal with the legality of it being kind of open source, right? The OGL is really, to be honest, the OGL is peace of mind for a lot of ND developers. It's really important to them because as indie developers, they obviously don't have a lot of money to spend, especially on lawyers who tend to be extremely expensive. Joe Johnson, thank you very much for the donation. The $5 donation says, you may hear some people saying that they won and we lost because we canceled our plans. Those people will be right. I think that is totally true. Yeah, I think that is totally true. There is like a night and day responses. At one stage, somebody was taken off the job of responding to the community, and Kyle Brink was put in. And you can see the night difference. It's night and day. Thank you very much for the donation there, Joe. So they say these live survey results are clear. You want OGL 1.0. You want it to be irrevocable. You like the Creative Commons. The feedback is in such high volume and its direction is so planned that we're acting now. Number one, we are leaving the OGL 1.0A in place as is, untouched. Number two, we are also making the entire SRD 5.1 available under a Creative Commons license. And three, you choose which you prefer to use. Huzzah! Excellent. This is great. This is really good, right? This is really good. This is absolutely fantastic, in fact. I love this change. Totally. I absolutely love this change personally, okay? I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on this. But essentially, what they're saying is that they're just going to go back to the way it was. They're going back to the OGL 1.0A in place. Nothing will be changed. And I am so happy to hear that, to be frank. Now, I don't think that the OGL is perfect at all, like for in any regard. But I gotta say, like, this is a huge change. Like, I'm so happy that they have walked it back. I really am happy. Pathfinder selling out is what made them cave, says Bamboozle, a great crowd. I don't think it's just that. I think there was a confluence of factors. I really do think there was a confluence of factors. So number one, I think that one of the big things is the community coming together almost unanimously. So one of the things that Kyle Brink makes reference to inside this survey a bunch of different times was the almost the not only the volume but the direction of the feedback, that it was almost unanimous in the community that they did not like any of these changes. And I think that, I mean, if you've been part or even adjacent to Dungeons and Dragons over the last like couple of weeks, then you'll have heard this. Like, people do not like the changes, and it's for very good reason. I think content creators actually have been pretty valuable in kind of getting the word out, and I think that like DMs and people who are like really involved in the role-playing game hobby have been really big proponents about not changing the OGL. I think that one of the elements that Wizards and Hasbro obviously were kind of hoping was that most people wouldn't care about this, that the open gaming license was kind of like, for most people it's like, who cares? We're casual players. We don't really know anything about open gaming license. That sucks. There's kind of like a counter narrative that I saw that was going on in the kind of like Reddit and places like that, where people were saying that most casual players don't care about this. You would have the DM come up, set the table, and be like, "Damn, those Wizards of the Coast lot trying to change the OGL," and you've got your kind of traditional casual player being like, I don't really know anything about it. I don't really care. Let's just play D&D. But I don't think that was the case. I actually think that most Dungeons and Dragons players were kind of clued in on this, to be perfectly frank. It's one of those things where Wizards, I think, underestimated their own community and how engaged their own community is. Because at the end of the day, this isn't like a hobby where you sit and watch TV, where you're just exposed to content. Dungeons and Dragons is a very engaged hobby, right? Like the entire role-playing game hobby is extremely engaged. You have to really sit down and think about it. You have to be part of the community in order to play it. You need to sit around at tables, or virtual tables at that as well. Thank you very much for the donation there. Crypto Kev says, going back to the way it was for now, LMAO. Well, that's the thing. I think there is a little bit of a caution here to all of this teal. I think that this definitely showed Wizards of the Coast at their worst. This is probably one of the biggest crises for Wizards of the Coast that I have seen in a really, really long time. Like a really long time. I started playing tabletop role-playing games around just before the arrival of 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons. I actually started with Dark Heresy of all things. I got in through Warhammer. But whenever I started playing, 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons had just come out, and I actually played Pathfinder before I played Dungeons and Dragons as a result, because people were like, dude, just play Pathfinder. Just play Pathfinder. It's basically Dungeons and Dragons, but better. So I didn't play Dungeons and Dragons until 5th edition came out, like many, many years. I've been playing like role-playing games for years before I even tried Dungeons and Dragons as a result of this. And that's pretty dangerous for a company that kind of has a stranglehold on a hobby, right? Like on an almost monopoly position, to simply lose that. Now, they did kind of go mask off a little bit. I still think, obviously, all of this changes to the OGL. This is something the Wizards of the Coast want, right? And I'd heard D&D Shorts had been talking about how this was something that Chris Cow, the kind of like the head of digital monetization for Wizards of the Coast, that this is a lot of these changes were being pushed by them. Now, I don't think that they were alone in this. I think this is something obviously that most of the executives are probably in favor of, because money on the sheet, gotta get the numbers, gotta make them higher, no matter what. And now that I think the D&D Beyond subscription cancellations were the biggest thing to push their hand, because that is money lost right now. That's a bad quarter. Nobody wants that. Big time victory, says Phantom Media. So happy. I agree. People are actually saying that this that this isn't the biggest victory. I actually think this is huge. This is so unprecedented. I don't think when was the last time we saw a company actually make a change for the better? And I don't want to sound cynical when I say that, but honestly, I feel like it's been a really long time since I've actually heard a company capitulate the criticism. Rather than just some sort of the performative oh, here is 1.2, here's 1.3. I genuinely thought that we were going to be in for a really big slog here, and that they were going to keep pushing it, and that by the end of it, we were going to end up with some sort of weaselly, middle-of-the-road option where Wizards still got most of their main things, but there was a couple of little changes here and there. The kind of little breadcrumbs for the community. Ooh, you want your bread? I honestly thought that's where we were going to end up. But here we are. And they're now talking about just walking it back. And, it's kind of sad that the best we could hope for is a return to the status quo. But by golly, I will take it, people. I will absolutely take it. Thank you very much for the donation from Eric. Says, what about OGL 1.2? Where are we supposed to be like? Going into this. How could Wizard of the Coast not expect universal pushback? Tone-deaf goofballs. I totally agree. I think that they completely underestimated the strength of feeling on this matter. I really do. It's one of those elements where they're kind of like, it's kind of like Games Workshop as well, right? Where I think that Wizards and Hasbro and the executives class, again, I want to stress that this is an element that you often see from certain employees. It's not the entirety of like Wizard of the Coast. I think most of the designers, most of the people who actually work on the games kind of understand their community, because more often than not, they're actually in the community. Whereas you get the kind of people, the executive class people who don't understand the products that they're selling, and they'll say things like I think that they believe that the hobby was Dungeons and Dragons, right? It's the Dungeons and Dragons hobby as opposed to the role-playing game hobby. And the moment that this whole OGL thing changed and people started canceling their D&D subscriptions and moving to Pathfinder and Call of Cthulhu was selling out, they were like, oh, okay, we've screwed up. We've actually messed up really badly here. And I think that they were absolutely terrified by those changes. Thank you very much for the donation there, Red Foreman. Says, count on the new 6th edition D&D being under an entirely new OGL and being more based on their virtual tabletop. They think live D&D is outdated. We'll see. Thank you very much for that donation, Red. And a very, very good point as well. I totally agree. This is something I was going to talk about. I totally agree. So I think that as we see it right now, they're not making changes to the OGL for now. I don't think that this is totally over. I think that this isn't done, right? This isn't done. So if we remember a lot of the language that Wizards used in their communication, including from Kyle Brink, they said things like, we are modernizing the OGL for the 21st century. We need these changes. And I don't think that opinion has changed internally within Wizard of the Coast and Hasbro. I think that they do believe that they need a lot of these changes that we as a community have obviously demonstrated that we don't want and we don't enjoy. So what does that mean? I think they'll be back. Like, I don't think that this is over. And I do agree that I think it will kind of come alongside one D&D as well. Wow, thank you very much for the big $20 donation there, San Mercy. Wow, thank you very much. That's very kind of you. I do think that this isn't over. Now, that said though, I think that this is like, it's a victory night though. I think we can all take a day off. We can all take a Saturday off and be like, huzzah, and, have a little bit of a party, get off the boat, kiss a nurse, all that sort of good business, have a little parade. I think that we can definitely, headlines here. This is great news. Absolutely fantastic news. And it's especially good news for the people who rely on the OGL in order to actually, kind of live their life and run their business and sell their kind of D&D content. They're their role-playing, open gaming license content, the people who were really worried. It's absolutely fantastic news for them. Now, that's it. I want to put this out here in case it doesn't get mentioned later. So much damage has been done by all of this. I think that this is absolutely something that Wizards of the Coast should be lambasted for. I think that they got it wrong. I think that they purposefully knew that it wasn't going to be best for the community. I think that they kind of knew that there was going to be members of the community that wouldn't like it. I think they knew that it was going to disrupt the third-party cottage industry that has sprung up about D&D, and I think they didn't care, right? They didn't care. This isn't a case where they were like, oh, whoops, we've come to the conclusion that obviously this was bad. We just realized. That's not the case. Wizards were forced to stop this. They were forced by the community. It was us. We did it, guys. We did it. We made them realize that this was a bad choice, that this was a bad decision. And I think that that is something that we really have to remember, and we have to be prepared for the future when they try to walk this back again, because I think they will. I think they will with 1D&D at some stage in the future. Not to mention, tons of damage has already been done to the community. I personally am aware of a number of freelancers who have lost work as a result of this, of a number of Kickstarters that have either been delayed or totally cancelled as a result of this, of game lines that have been cancelled as a result of these changes. This was bad. This has impacted the industry very extremely adversely. And that's super lame. That is really, really bad. So we can take joy in the victory that this change has been walked back. There's going to be people tonight sleeping well, but let me say, I just want to put it out there right now before we go any further, that this was really, really bad. This was really bad, and they shouldn't have done this in the first place. But I'm glad that they didn't. I'm glad that it's over now. I'm glad that they have decided that it's done. For sure. Andre Arcana says, I was more upset by the rumors of Wizards of the Coast employees afraid to say the new OGL was a bad idea. Andre, I gotta be honest. The thing is, I'm not surprised, right? Like, I don't know. To be honest, I kind of got the impression that there's a lot of people in the community who haven't worked in a big multinational company before. I have, okay? And honestly, I'm not surprised that there was a lack of... firstly, I'm not surprised that there was a lot of dissent within the kind of like the lower ranks, below decks of Wizards of the Coast, because frankly, I've seen organizations that have gotten, whenever decisions are made by the higher ups, that nobody likes and that morale is rock bottom. I've been part of organizations like that, and yeah, 100%. Dissent is something that happens in big businesses all the time. I'm actually surprised that so many of them were willing to go forward and leak things to the community, actually. I think that was actually very brave of a lot of people. I'm not surprised to see that people were afraid to say that the new OGL was a bad idea, because there is generally a conception, like this is people's careers on the line. They don't want to risk them at all. And if the executives are being extremely strict, shall we say, jobs would definitely be on the line. Like, it's not politic to be seen to be talking against the executives' plans, right? Sean Vieira says, watch to see who exits Hasbro Wizards of the Coast in the next couple of months. It will show who lost the power struggle. I definitely think that there was some internal politicking going on right now. I suspect that Brink, honestly, it sounds like he has kind of taken the reins on this one. There was an uncredited response from Wizards of the Coast. You guys remember the first uncredited response from Wizards of the Coast, where they kind of ended it with, some will say that that they won, but so do we. That response, I think, was definitely written by somebody close to the OGL changes who didn't like it, because it kind of was extremely petulant. I don't know if we're going to see Chris Cow to be honest, because I suspect a lot of his changes were backed up by people like Chris Cox and Cynthia Williams, right? So Cynthia Williams is president of Wizards of the Coast, and Chris Cox is the CEO of Hasbro. And I suspect that Chris Cow actually has their confidence, because the changes that he's talking about so obviously lead to a ton more money for Wizards of the Coast. Like, this is endemic to Hasbro, guys. Like, this is something that the company as a whole wants. They need more money. They need more money, and they will try and get those any way possible. This is why I really think that the D&D Beyond cancellation of subscriptions was one of the reasons that forced their hand, because suddenly, bam, they have a direct loss of income immediately. Like, that must have been terrifying. And then to see things like your competitors suddenly selling out in books, you've got people who used to be only Dungeons and Dragons players were moving on to other systems. And this comes at a particularly vulnerable time for Wizards of the Coast, but not to mention, we had seen a ton of new people come into the role-playing game hobby over COVID, right? We had a ton of new people. Seals were better than ever for Dungeons & Dragons, because it wasn't really the role-playing game hobby they got into. It was Dungeons & Dragons. Tons of people got into Dungeons & Dragons over COVID. And what happened to that population? Well, over the OGL crisis, I think a ton of them started to filter out into the wider hobby. Tons of people were finding out about games that they didn't even know existed. They didn't know it existed. They didn't know about Call of Cthulhu. They didn't know about Pathfinder. And suddenly, those names are getting talked about everywhere. You had D&D subreddits, forums, talking about Pathfinder. You had Discord communities talking openly about Pathfinder and why you should play it. It was a huge change, a sea change, a cultural change. And That's crazy. And I think the Wizards have tried to nip it in the bud now with this announcement. And, you know, Chris and Cynthia can go, says Kuwith. Well, I mean, I don't see them going, but I mean, anything's possible. I mean, I didn't see this happening either, so what the hell do I know? The Hermit the Tower said, I had a sudden burst of local mini sales. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that. Wade A. Parker says, woo, okay, I don't know. Just literally lost you there. Literally lost you, Wade. Top it up again. Justin says, building better worlds. Oh, I've got the appropriate mug for big corporate changes. You know, sometimes this stuff can be kind of cutthroat. Drunkosaur says, I remember the slash and burn, leave everything in ruins while they escape with golden parachutes, school of CEOs and businesses. Well, this is the deal. I mean, we should, if this CEO, if Chris Cox does go, guys, I mean, we should all spare a thought for him, right? I mean, he'll only be leaving with like a couple $100,000, you know, straight into another high-level executive position that's got a 6-figure salary sum. Oh, very sad, right? Very, very sad. Zach Williams says, corporation needs your money, guys. They need it. Yeah, right? Think of all those hungry mouths. Ilya Mug, nice, says Casual Normie. Hell yeah. Absolutely love it. So I actually did, well, I didn't buy it, actually. I was gifted it. I was gifted the Alien RPG last weekend for my birthday. So I look forward to indulging in that. I got that and Impossible Landscapes for Delta Green. Red Foreman, thank you very much for the donation. Says, talking about other games is great. We'll see how easy it is to find a non-D&D game in 6 months. Memory is a short and fickle thing. I agree with you, Red. I do think that memory can't be a short and fickle thing. And honestly, though, I will say the strength of feeling in the community about this is a lot bigger than perhaps Wizards of the Coast anticipated, because really their initial plan was to wait and see. Remember the 8 days that occurred when it was just radio silence as third-party companies were collapsing, people were creating their own new licenses, and the community was absolutely up in uproar? Silence. But it's still going. It still went. So hopefully in 6 months, we still have people playing some games. You know, campaigns, they can last a while. If somebody started a Pathfinder campaign recently, just last week, we might still have another couple of weeks, couple of months. And here's the really important part about that. Whenever somebody gets into another game, you expose that game to a bunch of different people, but also they get into the ecosystem. They realize that there's other RPGs. They might have fun. They might be therefore open to trying new ones. I think that element of all of this was really healthy for the role-playing game hobby. So I think honestly, this was good for some parties. John Tritt, thank you very much for the £5 donation there. Says, which CC license has to allow derivatives and obviously allow commercial use? Viral CC by SA would be incredible. Would they go that far? Honestly, John, I genuinely have no idea at this stage. I have genuinely no idea. Most of the things I know about Creative Commons is that it's incredibly complicated. And there are 3 different versions. So I'm not 100% sure what they would go for. I have to imagine that they would go for probably the most restrictive, but maybe not. Honestly, to be honest, we're through the looking glass here, people. We're in uncharted territory. I genuinely don't know how to take any of this news because I didn't see this coming. My radar is usually okay with these sorts of corporate shenanigans. I was off this time, guys. I gotta be honest. I'm a mea culpa, this bad boy. I thought we were going to have 3 months of fighting and bickering before we would get just a random OGL that really wasn't very good. That had a couple of the royalties were changed in some way, maybe maybe there was a little bit of clarification language added here and there, but on some comfort clauses and stuff like that. But I genuinely did not see anything else. I'm a little bit shocked, guys. I've just read this news, and I'm still a little bit in awe. Scython Nalo asks, which worst core in your opinion, Wayland or Umbrella? Ooh, I'll be honest, Umbrella are worse, right? Because at least Wayland have a coherent plan, right? I get Wayland Yutani's plan. Get xenomorphs, drop them on colonies whenever they rebel, let the aliens eat everybody. You've still got all the infrastructure. Bada bing, bada boom, everything's good. Umbrella are just LOL zombies, right? Okay, fair enough. Umbrella are looking for immortality. I can respect that. I think they're both as bad as each other, but I gotta say Wayland, right? I mean, come on, the channel's sponsored by them. Thank you very much for the donation there. Sean says, well, a lot of people have purchased new games. Paizo sold 8 months of books in 2 weeks. Chaosium has run out of Call of Cthulhu starter sets, so play on. 100% agreed. I did see that actually today. Paizo have sold 8 months of books in 2 weeks. Chaosium have sold incredibly well as well. We saw them actually, D&D books were below them in the Amazon top sellers this week. So I think both Call of Cthulhu and Pathfinder, we're both selling really well. And this is incredible. See, whenever I think of somebody playing D&D, I think, okay, sure, you're playing D&D. Whenever I see somebody playing something like Pathfinder or Call of Cthulhu, I start to think, okay, now you're getting into the RPG ecosystem, right? Because the moment that you break through that barrier of, I don't want to learn another RPG, the moment you play another RPG, it's like your field of possibilities has opened. And suddenly you're like, wow, okay, it's not that hard, actually. I can play other games. And they do other stuff. They do stuff better. Sometimes they do stuff a little bit worse. Sometimes, they're different. They open up new experiences. And I think it makes people more likely to try other games if they have played something different from D&D in the first place. Honestly, I think that there's a lot of inertia. Like your first RPG is the hardest, and once you get past that and you play another one, you're like, oh, okay, actually it's not that bad. The DM has to learn everything anyway, so I can just skate by. That's the trick. That's the big trick. It's like a big trick where people think that it's going to be this huge onerous task to move on to another one. This got people to change RPGs and to try other games. Whenever I see somebody buy something like the Call of Cthulhu starter set, I'm like, yes! You will now know what it's like to play a horror RPG. It's so different from D&D. And you might love it. You might find out. You're like, yeah, this is actually the game for me. This is actually the thing I totally adore. This is actually what's up. I know people, okay, this is wild. I've known people in my life who don't like adventure games, who don't like fantasy, and all they play is D&D. And I'm like, what are you doing? There's other games. So I'm really glad to see that there's other people out there that will be playing new games. These are all new tables that are going to be trying out new stuff, and I think that's so awesome. Thank you very much for the $5 donation there, Mark Miller, with the sexy little pair making a little cheer noise. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Oh, I'm so happy, guys. I really am. I'm genuinely so happy. I'm really happy for everybody who, especially for those companies that were existentially, there was a lot of existential fear amongst a lot of companies out there in the industry. So I'm really glad to see them get some comfort today. Although I kind of wish the Wizard of the Coast would stop making dropping these little nuggets of announcements at 9 p.m. my time on a Friday evening. Come on, guys. Please don't do this to me. Casual Over says, Wayland has spaceships too. Exactly. That is true. The Queen says, if you design for D&D, learn a new system, learn to switch between the two, spread your risk, learn lessons from this. Really great. I think it's from the Queen. Wow, okay, well, fancy having you here in the chat channel. I totally agree. I think that so for Wizards going forward, I think that there was a lot of damage that was done that is irreparable. I think that as much as there might be a lot of the more casual player base will be like, okay, now it's over, we can go back, we can play D&D. I think there's going to be a lot of tables that basically are like, Wizards listened, this is good, we're done here, pack your things, guys, we're going home. I think there's going to be a ton of more engaged players, and I think there's going to be a ton of third-party content creators who kind of think, yeah, never again. This ain't happening again, and they will indeed be moving on. In fact, actually, a lot of them have already done the work of trying to divest themselves from Dungeons and Dragons, and now they're moving over into either their own bespoke systems, or they're moving over into Pathfinder with Paizo, or they're moving over to some other open gaming license, and they have moved away from D&D, and they've done a lot of work in the last week to do that, and I don't think they're going to reverse anytime soon. I think a lot of them are going to keep with it. But that said, there is a ton of utility for a lot of people for them to have their game be in the open game license of Dungeons and Dragons, to be openly compatible with Dungeons and Dragons, because there's a big audience of people there who will only play Dungeons and Dragons content, and I think it's valuable for those companies to be able to sell them. So I'm happy for them that they'll be able to get away, they'll be able to continue to do that now. Red, thank you very much for the $5 donation, says, my longest campaigns were D&D. My best RPG experience were other systems. Yeah, Dungeons and Dragons, I think campaign-wise tends to encourage these longer campaigns because it's like, I gotta get to the next level, bro. I got these new like things to level up in. Or you want to see, there's like different tiers of play, right? There's like the low level, then you want to get the third level so you can get your actual capstones, your actual like abilities, and you start to feel like you're actually playing your class instead of just some fellow who'll die if you roll unluckily. And then once you do that, you're in like the mid game, which is kind of like the funnest bit of Dungeons and Dragons. Well, actually, no, level 1's the funnest bit of Dungeons and Dragons. Changed my mind. But then you get into the mid tier, which I'd say is like the standard play from like 3 to 10. And then from 10, you're like, okay, this is like a totally different experience. So I think that Dungeons and Dragons, by its actual game design, kind of encourages people to play longer campaigns. But I will say, I think my funnest games have probably been the games where the mechanics kind of got out of the way a little bit more. That's why I really love games like Call of Cthulhu, because they can be very light. They can genuinely just be a D100, roll under, see how it goes. Vendetta Wild says, Wizard of the Coast is literally the abusive ex-boyfriend that wants a second chance swearing. They have changed. So yes and no, okay? I do agree with you. I do think we need to keep all of this in perspective, that we have to remember that Wizard of the Coast did do this thing, and I think it's really, really bad. I do totally agree with you on that, and I think that we need to remember that this is something that they want to do, right? That if they could have done this, they would have if they thought they could have gotten away with this, they would have done this. If we hadn't seen such a pushback from the community, they would have walked through, they would have marched through. Remember, they sent out the drafts of the OGL to third-party content creators to sign. Right? They asked for signatures, and they gave a deadline. There was a time pressure applied on this thing. They did not expect pushback to the level they got it. And I think they've been like a little bit shocked by the level of pushback that they have received. And they've been like, and just went, okay, we walk it back. We give up. Uncle, we call uncle. But they wanted to do it, right? Like their original plan was like, yeah, sure, we should own everything. What's up? Give us money. Also, we should be able to see all of your books and accounts because we might be able to make money from you, and we want to know if we can make money from you. So, yeah, I think that is definitely perspective we need to have. I'm kind of in the, I'm like in the post-announcement glow here, people. Like, I'm in the post-announcement glow. I'm really pleased, honestly. I'm still a little bit shocked and a little bit like, whew, I'm surprised they did something good. Oh my God, what's happened here? I'm not used to this. Guys, I've been covering Games Workshop for a while now. I'm not used to companies kind of like learning from their mistakes. To be honest, I'm like shocked and surprised. I really am, you know? All the money, says PK. Yes, it's all about all the money. David Goodwin says, you want to point out the community 500 in chat, no mods, no problems, been in chats with 5 that needed shut down. David, hey, we got a great community here. We've got an absolutely fantastic community here. Absolutely fantastic. Crypto Kev with the 10 memberships. Oh my God, look at that. Thank you very much. That's 20 memberships donated today. Thank you very much, Crypto Kev. Check this guy out. The Giftorama, this Kabuki kid. How about that? Thank you very much, Crypto. That's very kind of you. Frankenstein says the CCBY attribution license they have chosen is way less restrictive than I ever would have thought they would use. Well, there you go, guys. There you go. To be honest, I am actually, this has been a huge shocker of a night. Wow. Absolutely wow. I haven't seen the light. This I feel like the Grinch, you know, at the end of the what I was gonna say the Christmas Carol. It's not Christmas Carol. It's the Dr. Seuss Christmas Fun House. I can't remember what it's called. He's on a cave. He looks down on Whoville. I remember Whoville. I can't remember the title. Okay, the Grinch Stole Christmas. That's it, right? I feel like the Grinch at the end of that movie, kind of like, oh my God. What's going on? You know, like they're all standing in the circle in the village singing songs, but I stole all their presents. I feel like I'm looking at Wizards of the Coast. They're watching their shattered monetization scheme. They're like OGL, like lying down, and they've come out and they're like, sorry, we're gonna just reverse it all. And I'm like, what? That's not what you're meant to do. Look at EA, look at Activision, look at Amazon, look at Games Workshop. You're not meant to like back off. You're meant to double down. This isn't the expected playbook at all. You're meant to double down, and then it's meant to blow up in your face. Like, I don't get it. I genuinely don't get it. I'm positively shocked. In a really good way. In a really, really good way. Hobby Color said, when Cindy Lou wished for a Red Ryder BB gun, and the Grinch said that she'd shoot her eye out. Yeah. Red Foreman says, I honestly think Wizards of the Coast don't consider giving up on the OGL for 5th edition is meaningless because after one D&D comes out, they believe no one will care about older editions. Oh, okay. That's a sexy little thought. Okay, so what you're saying is, you're saying basically that you suspect that Wizards of the Coast are like, okay, mea culpa, our bad, we're gonna walk all this back, never mind, please like us again, please give us your goodwill. They're gonna walk it all back, and then they're gonna basically, whenever one D&D comes out, and they'll do a little update to the OGL at that stage. They don't care about people making content for 5th edition because, frankly, they don't think anyone will be playing 5th edition. And I get where they might be. I get where that could come from, that kind of thought, because 6th edition, sorry, 1 D&D is extremely similar to 5th edition. It's extremely similar. And in fact, the little differences I've seen, like critting on skill checks and critical fumbles and things like that, are changes that I don't like. But it's essentially 5th edition. Like, the rules are essentially 5th. It's not like going from 3rd edition to 4th edition. This is 5th edition to, like, 5th edition 5.5, right? And I could see them thinking that therefore most people will want to move over to the new system. I really could. But I suspect that honestly people will probably move to 6th edition. But I really think that Wizards will have a fight on their hands the next time they try to do this. Like, we might see them be sneaky. Is the thing, right? This is the thing. I always see companies are always being really, really sneaky, and they were sneaky with this, right? They were sneaky with the OGL change. Like, they tried to just get third-party content creators just to sign it. The only reason we know about any of this is because of leaks. The only reason we know about any of this was because some third-party content creators leaked some of this information out to the YouTubers and things like that. And that's the only reason why we're talking about it. We were able to mobilize as a community. You were saying earlier, we heard talk earlier about to see who leaves Wizard of the Coast soon from Sean. But, I mean, to be perfectly honest, we could see firings in the future, right? Like, what if those leaks or these people who leaked the information are found out? So hopefully that doesn't happen. Zach Wheeler says, 1D&D is actually just a picture of a virtual goblin with his butt out. Mark my words. Well, you know, it could be. I would, honestly, that would be an improvement for me, to be perfectly frank. Picture of a goblin with his butt out is pretty much always an improvement. Let's see here. Zach Wheeler, yeah, so Matt says they'll totally try and backdoor it. If they can't force it through, they'll draw back and work out a way to sneak in changes they want to see. I totally agree with you, Matt. I think that we need to, as a community, we need to be really, really mindful of this. I think that this is like a retrenchment by Wizards of the Coast. They're basically going back. They're like, okay, do over. Okay, you caught us fair and square. Okay, uncle, we give up. You win. Okay, fine. We're not going to make any changes. We're going to go back to the way it was like a month ago, okay? So, okay, fine. We put the toys back together again. They've done that. Then they're going to hope for, like, the D&D Beyond subscriptions to go back up again, but I don't know if it necessarily will. They're going to hope that, like, that they get all the goodwill back, because that's what a lot of this was for, right? It was trying to get the goodwill. They absolutely blew through their goodwill in, like, record time. It's very rare I see a company do this, but it does happen. I saw them absolutely blow through their goodwill in record time. They're, okay, sorry, mea culpa. And then I think they are going to try and backdoor this in certain little ways. There's going to be little elements of this that were extremely important to Wizards of the Coast that they really, really want to see happen. And I think they're going to try and push those through in future. So we have to be really, really vigilant. And I think that they might be hoping that if they can kind of get little elements through here and there gradually, this is how you get them, guys. You go to slow burn, right? So usually, this is the standard practice, okay? This is what you usually do. This isn't like a conspiracy theory or anything. This is like pretty demonstrable. What you do is you push as hard as possible. You go, okay, let's see. What do we want? Let's go as hard as possible. Let's present our greatest possible position, our best possible position, our like Christmas land, magical Christmas land. Here is what we want. Okay. And then you expect some level of pushback. So you go, okay, sorry. Okay. We will compromise with you by going back to here. Right. So they go from like, the best possible thing in the world to like what they were kind of would have loved. Like better than they would have expected. And then that feels like a compromise for the other party. And you see companies do this all the time. I mean, we basically moved from horse armor to loot boxes with this one, right? We saw companies incrementally over time slowly monetize video games more and more aggressively every single time as they pushed forward. Companies pushed forward, were told, no, loads of criticism, they had to walk it back. And then what would happen the next year? They'd push forward again. And you see this gradual moving of of the goalposts to this worse and worse position. I think that what we've seen here is that's what honestly what I expected to happen here. They would push forward, then they would walk back to like a more performatively pliable position, right? To something that people would have been a little bit more happier, to a more comfortable position for the community. But they've really retreated back on a lot on this one. But I think we're going to see maybe little elements get pushed forward in the future. So I think we really do have to keep an eye out for this. Waffle Hunt says, I just canceled D&D Beyond and let Wizard of the Coast know that this is directly the fault of Chris Cox and Hasbro. Well, to be honest, Waffle, I kind of wish that I had a D&D Beyond subscription so I could have canceled it. I really do. I felt so left out. Everyone was like, I'm canceling my D&D Beyond subscription. I'm like, I will continue not to have one. Yeah, resistance. Redneck says, anyway, I wanted to drop in and check out Discord stream, but I have a Planescape game that I need to finish setting up this evening. Today's challenge, if the party isn't careful, is a bed below. Well, good luck with that one, Redneck. I hope you enjoy it. Adam says, this is great news. I'm so glad I filled out the survey. Well done, Adam. Totally agreed. Absolutely fantastic news. Better than expected. Better than expected, honest to God. And I'm a little bit shocked. You're paid up through May. Waffle. Quote says, there's no way they won't try and slip things back in. Now's the time to be the most cautious. I totally agree. I do think we can all, like, we can do that, right? We can sort of, I don't have a hand or whatever, but we can all pat ourselves on the back, right? I think that the community here really rallied together and got things changed for the better. Well, resisted the change for the worse, right? But in the best way possible. So yeah. So I think that we can all give ourselves a little bit of a pat on the back. But yes, I do agree that going forward, we need to be really, really cautious. Really, really cautious. And I think that I hope that people continue to try and play new games. I actually did a video just today. It's kind of annoying because it was framed around the whole OGL thing. So, like, suddenly that's not new. I tell you what, see this OGL thing with the news? It's been absolutely wild. It's like every single day. I couldn't keep up. It was too much going on. But I hope that people basically do continue to try some new games. I hope some people's Pathfinder games arrive and their Call of Cthulhu starter sets arrive and they go, ooh, I kind of like this. It's a little bit different. It's not a 500-page book to read. What? I can just pick and choose from the system as I want. Oh my goodness. Mark Charles says, still, take time, play different games, see what the rest of us are playing. Yeah, exactly. I totally agree with that. Masperdo says, to unite the TTRPG community is probably Wizard of the Coast's greatest achievement. Yeah, probably, to be honest. I've heard more talk about alternative games in the last, month than I had heard in the last 3 years before that. So that's pretty awesome. Anon Adderley said, by their own numbers, they only had to alienate 20% of their market. Sean Clayton, thank you very much for the donation, says, if only the wargaming community was as active as the RPG community. Games Workshop is everyone's worst nightmare with wizards, and 10 times worse than that. Sean, this is something that I have been thinking about a lot over the last couple of weeks. I positively agree with you. Wizard of the Coast had to respect the community, had to respect the buying power of the community who rallied around the independent creators in a really big way. And it wasn't just kind of performative outrage for the community. There was substantive changes. People were canceling their subscriptions. Now, can you imagine Games Workshop doing something and everyone rushing to cancel their Warhammer Plus subscription? I can't. And it's honestly a little bit depressing, to be frank. You have to remember, though, that the wargaming community and the kind of like the role-playing game community are very different, right? With role-playing games, you've got this small group of power users who have bought basically DMs, who have bought a ton of the books, and you have these tables full of players who haven't invested as much in the game, but they like playing the game, right? They enjoy playing it. What that means is that you have tastemakers at the table. So if DMs are like, actually, I don't like what Wizard of the Coast are doing, and if your players are like, okay, you can play a totally different game, and you haven't invested too much. I think a lot of people have invested at most like 3 books, 4 books, 5 books maybe into Dungeons and Dragons, and they can move over to other systems because they don't lose anything by doing so. They don't lose their books. With Games Workshop products, with Warhammer though, that's different. People have invested like their life savings into Games Workshop products. products. They have invested like rooms of their houses. I'm not talking about just myself here. They've invested rooms of their houses into just wargaming products from Games Workshop. And so to kind of move from that into another system is untenable. It's just not thinkable. It's insanity to them. And so you have this group of people who are just heavily invested. Not to mention that people tend to stick around at Dungeons and Dragons for longer. What I tend to find with wargaming, which is really insane when you think about it, there's a lot of churn in the wargaming community. You have people who get into war games who really enjoy it for a while. They're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna collect a Warhammer army. And they get into it and they start trying to collect a Warhammer army. They buy a bunch of boxes. They buy into the FOMO from Games Workshop, right? They go like, oh, I'm going to buy the army box. And they buy the army box. And then 6 months down the line, they have these massive piles of sprues. Most of their army hasn't been completed. They're looking at them. They see prices go up again for the third time in the last 6 months. They see their books become redundant. New books are coming out. And they start to think, like, is this even worth it? And they think, and most people go no. And they actually leave. So you see lots of people move out of the wargaming hobby, which doesn't happen in D&D as much. And role-playing games. And then the people who stay are like the ones who are really heavily invested in the game. And the ones who have been, I think, oftentimes most taken advantage of by Games Workshop. And so they're invested in the infrastructure around them. And therefore, they're very defensive of the infrastructure if anybody complains, right? The people who are still playing Warhammer are the people who really want to play Warhammer. Or have been ensnared by a lot of the corporate practices, or are very new. Right? This is why I don't, people talk about the Games Workshop. They talk about the Games Workshop kind of like annual statements and go, see, money's up for Games Workshop. But I don't think that necessarily reflects the health of the Warhammer hobby, right? I don't think it reflects on the health because I think that means that they're just getting more money from smaller groups of people. And it's really sad. See, I think that wargaming could be a lot cheaper, but mostly because every other company aside from Games Workshop is a lot cheaper. Because it's evidentiary, like it's just true. That the fact is that wargaming is actually a very cheap hobby at times compared to like Warhammer, right? PK, thank you very much for the fifth edition Dungeons and Dragons. Good God, thank you very much, PK, for the 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. Thank you very much for the $5 donation. Says, I got in with 2nd edition D&D. Branching out was the best thing I ever did. World of Darkness, Fallout 2D20, Call of Cthulhu, 7th Sea, and so many more. That's awesome to hear, PK. I honestly think that it's the best thing that I ever did as well. I think not only in role-playing games, but in wargaming. I honestly, guys, most of my hobbies that are very creative hobbies, video games, role-playing games, war games, board games, I have always found nothing but great experiences from trying other games, from giving them a little bit more time and trying other products. Absolutely fantastic. Honestly, I love it so much. So I'm glad that you had a good time as well with that, PK. I think a lot of people do start with Dungeons and Dragons, then they move on to other games. If you were around in the 90s, which if you're playing 2nd edition D&D, I'm guessing you were, then I'm guessing that you probably moved into World of Darkness, because for a while there, World of Darkness was like the big dog, right? The big RPG dog. Mark Scar, thank you very much for the $10 donation. Says the OGL debacle was Wizards of the Coast looking to Games Workshop and saying, you want to alienate your audience? We'll show you how. Here, hold my beer. Play games, have fun. Yes, Mark. I think that, so it's funny. I do think that actually, Wizards of the Coast were taking a bit of inspiration from Games Workshop. What you find with Games Workshop is that they have highly aggressively monetized a small audience of people. So they have a small community, but they monetize them a lot. They'll sell them books like every couple of months. They'll sell them more minis every couple of months. We just saw new Space Marines come out. New Space Marine models came out were just announced today. What faction needed new models? Space Marines, obviously. And the reason why they do that is because they want to continue to, like, it's like drawing blood from a stone. They want to keep monetizing the same audience over and over again. And I think that, honestly, Wizards of the Coast were taking a little bit of inspiration from that. Now, obviously, they want as broad an appeal as possible. They want the maximum number of people into their game. But they want the maximum number of people who will pay them money, right? So this is the thing. They find, this is my honest belief. They find Wizards of the Coast find community members that are into Dungeons and Dragons through third parties as valueless, absolutely valueless, like almost worthless, because those people aren't giving them money. That's why they were trying to monetize the third parties, right? They were trying to monetize the third party content creators. because they needed some income to justify even bothering with those people. There's money on the table, never leave money on the table. That would be their conception. Games Workshop have really mastered the art of aggressively monetizing their audience, and I think that Wizards of the Coast really wanted that to be the case as well. Oh god, he's getting out another hit location table, says Waffle Hut. Let's see here. Matsperdo says GW is a wargaming whaling company. They have a very specific business model. They believe that they're a niche hobby, which means that therefore they need to aggressively monetize people in the community. I totally disagree. I think that it could be way bigger, but there we go. We got an ideological disagreement there. I think it could be as big as role-playing games. Wargaming, that is. Rep Foreman, thank you very much for the $5 donation. Says, I've literally spent thousands of dollars on models and books for 40k. Don't play or want to play. I just like painting and the lore and the novels. And yeah, I think that there's tons of people in that position as well. I think there's like tons and tons and tons of people. Just out of question though, Red, have you ever played like a game of like a war game that isn't 40k? Because I'm gonna be honest, might alienate a couple of people here. 40k is probably one of the worse war games. It's like one of the harder war games to get into and play. The lore and stuff is fun, but I would really recommend checking out one-page rules. If you want to actually take your models and do something with them on the table that doesn't take like 3 hours, that you could play like in an hour and just move them around and kill any like other units, I would really recommend one-page rules. It's a lot of fun. It's like the quick start game, you know? It's like a little quick, very flexible, very easy to play game. I'd really recommend it. And I feel like sometimes I should be on the one-page rules advertising team. Come on, guys. Where's my secret truckloads of cash? That's what I need. What's going on over here? Do I play Malifaux? Asked Bomberman. I don't know. I've never actually played Malifaux. It's on my like bucket list of games to play. I've never actually played Malifaux at all. I've watched games of it played. I know a lot about it, but I haven't actually played it. I do want to check it out though. Is this real? Seems too good to be true, says Alan Fogarty. Alan, I totally agree. It does, doesn't it? Doesn't it seem too good to be real? I'm still in shock. I really am. I'm genuinely surprised that Wizards have just actually backed down totally. Like, it's wild. I think that we should keep our guard up going into the future, but wow. Yeah, it does seem too good to be true. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'm waiting for like some sort of awful news to occur. Tater Raider says Hasbro is up 0.93% for the month. Don't think that's anywhere close to inflation. Yeah, like they didn't. So we got to remember as well, just yesterday, Hasbro dropped like 1,000 employees. And I think that this news and announcement might be sort of tangentially related to that as well. I think this might be good news, kind of on top of the bad. Oh, thank you very much for the $7 Canadian there, Sean says. Hasbro Wizards of the Coast could have made a ton of money just by opening D&D Beyond to third parties. Seriously, they could have asked for 30% and 3PP would demand to do that. I totally agree. So I think that a lot of the times, these kind of like these ideas of trying to control ecosystems, they actually lose a lot of money. I think they're very short-term oriented, right? Because they create money in the short term, but I think they're not great infrastructure for actually like the kind of hobby. This is the thing with the OGL. The OGL was always really good for Wizards of the Coast, and it was kind of a mistake for them to kind of upset that, right? So third-party content creators making content for D&D actively helped Wizards of the Coast retain their monopoly on the role-playing game hobby. Right? It does. It actually helps them because it creates more content for Dungeons & Dragons. It means that there's more stuff for Dungeons & Dragons. You don't need to go out and play other games. You can just play Dungeons & Dragons. You can get all this different content. Wizards of the Coast, in their short-sightedness, were like, we need the money from these guys right now. What the hell? They're making money and we're not? Wizards of the Coast are making money through them. It's just that it's more diffuse. You can't, like, point at money of somebody who's now subscribed to D&D Beyond, who never would have gotten into D&D at all if it weren't for those third-party content creators. You can't point to him. You don't know whether or not he's subscribed as a result of that. They can't see where that money comes from. It's a lack of information. They don't have the knowledge of where that money comes from. Therefore, it doesn't exist to them, right? It may as well not exist. They want things where they can go, because we did this, it led to X, right? It's the same thing with the surveys. It's the same thing with the playtest surveys. They love being able to say, we made this decision because of X. And actually so this is like a rant that I'm going to have at some stage about playtesting and kind of opening up surveys and things like that and making gameplay decisions based on surveys. But basically, this is why a lot of the playtests are run from community feedback. It's so that they can have evidence to support changes that they make to underlying mechanics to games so that basically people don't lose jobs. themselves. So they don't go, I made a mistake. They go, I was following the evidence of the community feedback. Thank you very much for the $5 donation there, Red Foreman says, I've literally, oh, wait, I've already read this one. I've already read this. Yes, Red says, $5 donation says, not interested in actually playing, and I live in a very rural area. Same reason I've never played D&D. Wizards of the Coast only got my money from novels, but stop. That's fair enough. I mean, that's fair enough. But thank you very much for the donation. I really do appreciate that, Red Foreman. Any relation to that 90 show, Red? Is it? No? Thank you very much for the donation. I really appreciate that. I'm sorry to hear, though, that you haven't been able to play. Tabletop Simulator, though, you might want to check it out. You know, if you're interested, you might want to check it out. Norman Lennox with a very important message says, don't stop giving your love to the smaller third-party creators. I've given Hasbro enough of my money. Yes. So let's the kind of high has worn off. I've had my cigarette, you know what I mean? I've blown the fan in my face a little bit. I'm like, whew, that was a good evening. But let's all calm down for a little second. We're high off the victory. I totally agree, Norman. Let's remember where we are. We're just back to where we were a month ago. And I know that feels like magical Christmas land right now. But we are just back to where we were. So I mean, I'm kind of trying to tell myself this. I guess we should kind of moderate the praise that Wizards of the Coast get, I suppose, because really we are back to just where we should never have left here in the first place. This is like, for a while there, for like a couple of days, we were driving on the wrong side of the road, right? We're just back on the right side of the road. There's like a little bit of polite applause, like thank you very much for not crashing the car. But now we're just back to where we should have been, right? So okay, all right. So okay, I'm gonna chill. I'm gonna chill a little bit more in my undulated praise. Is undulated the right word? I don't know if it's the right word. It's probably not. Undulated. It sounds a little bit rude. Okay. Level one says Bob. Justin Ankevi says the OGL expires in 2034. We still have work to do. Freelancer says, I apologize to anyone who was trying to buy the Pathfinder books. I was the one that bought them all. You weren't alone. You weren't alone, Freelancer. Honestly, their sales were through the roof. Their sales were absolutely through the roof. Absolutely through the roof. Absolutely insane. Jess Hunt says, if you want a grim 90s British style RPG, I picked up Warlock the other day and it looks excellent. I've never heard of Warlock, actually. That sounds really, really interesting. That sounds really, really cool. I might check that out. I've been on a little bit of a kick lately. Crypto Kev, another 10 memberships. That's insane. That's insane. Thank you very much for the huge donation there. That's 30 memberships across the stream, guys. Thank you very much, Crypto Kev, giving out all the discourse emotes there. Wow, look at that. That's absolutely absurd. Whoa, that's insane. Thank you very much. That's nuts. Setting records, says Joshua Hatch. Yeah, right? Thank you very much. I really do appreciate that. We're going to see a lot of super hands telling us that crack is very Moorish, because indeed it is super hands. Thank you very much, Crypto Kev. Wow, that's absurd. Crypto Kev gone wild, says Titerator. Johnson Karam with a very interesting, a sexy little question there, asking, I wonder how this will affect adoption of the orc. Ooh, I think that is a really interesting question. I think that's a really interesting question. In a lot of ways, Wizards of the Coast have kind of undercut Paizo here, haven't they? Because loads of people were moving over to the orc kind of pretty much exclusively, right? And now a lot of the kind of impetus for that has stopped. But in all honesty, I think we're still going to see most companies, most people who were going to move over to the orc will continue to move over to the orc. I think it's still going to see a massive adoption. And I see Junkasaur here says, orc will see huge adoption. Every D&D third party will have an orc version. I actually agree totally with that. I think that will more than likely be the case. I think people will feel more comfortable doing that now. I'm not sure how quickly third parties are going to forget this. I think that maybe the casual player base might forgive and forget. This is the amount of memberships there, Crypto Kev. I think that we're going to see a lot of people kind of forgive and forget, but I don't think we're going to see third parties forgive and forget, right? Because a lot of them lost money. Like, they just lost money as a result of this. Like, boom, they lost money. A lot of them had to cancel projects. A lot of them were hurt really, really badly by these changes. A lot of people lost jobs. So I think that a lot of them aren't going to forget this. Now, after a while, it really depends. Over the next couple of years, we'll see. Crypto and CryptoKev is not cryptocurrency, says CryptoKev. The $2 donation there, making clear, it's not crypto. It's not cryptocurrency. Ralph Hummel says the creative community is that pissed off that orc will take off. I totally agree. There is an extreme strength of feeling among people. I mean, they have lost money. They have lost a lot of money as a result of this. Like, there's been tons of money lost, right? And we're not talking like money that Wizards of the Coast saw. Like, oh, there's money on the table. There's some people were making money and we weren't making money, so maybe we should make some the money. No, this is like actually like I had money. Like I had put money into I had invested money in this thing. I have worked for like 20 hours on this thing, like 100 hours, 300 hours on this thing, and I've employed people to like work on this thing. And now we've had to cancel it, right? And we've just lost like tens and tens of thousands. Like people have lost like money on this thing. Not a crypto bro, says CryptoKev. Orc is still happening. It will do nothing for them. It will take nothing for them to do and be a fun project, says Drunkus. So 100% it is. 100% it is. And I think it might become like the one that everyone cares about. Sean Clayton with a $10 donation says, on the bottom of page 30 of the Creative Commons 5.1 SRD is a description of the Vampire Strad. Is that description Strad now under Creative Commons? Yes, I guess it is. Yeah, I guess Strad is. So I think that the name vampire, I think the name Strad is under the Creative Commons, but the description of the vampire isn't. I think I don't know is the answer, because I'm not looking at the document right now. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. But yes, maybe in theory. To be honest, they went a lot further than I thought they were going to go, like, totally. They went, like, way further than I thought they were going to go. Aaron Rustin says, just because the schoolyard bully just got his teeth kicked in by nerds ganging up, and it doesn't mean that he's done being a bully. Yeah, we'll see. So corporations, obviously, they're big collections of individuals who kind of, they have competing priorities and different agreements, and there's different kind of groups and thought processes and different kind of philosophies governing that corporation, right? Companies can change because new people get in, but I think that overall Wizards of the Coast are still, I mean, they still have the mandate of increasing their profit by doubling their profit in 5 years, just after doubling their profit in 3 years. So like they're still gonna try and find ways to double their profit, really, for real. So we should be careful. Like, never forget that this is what happened. And this is gonna hang over them, though. Like, I think this is gonna haunt them. I think in the future, if they do make changes to the OGL, all it will take is for people to go, the OGL scandal's back, and people will be like, what? It's back? What's happened? What? There's a what? There's a what in the what now? There's an OGL in the, they'll be jumping out of the shower and like being like, what's going on? I'm ready. Okay, there's a what? And they'll be ready to stand up again. I really do think, because now everybody knows what the OGL is. That's actually kind of big, right? Everybody kind of has learned about the history of the OGL and like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff. So that's actually really important, I think, for the community. We've got like a more educated community now. In a lot of ways. Like, there was a ton of stuff about the OGL that I didn't know about that I learned throughout all of this. So I think that OGL PTSD, says Greg Rubinet. Yeah, Robinette. Yeah, exactly, right? Like, I think that this is something that it was really important for the community, honestly. Toto Miniature says, oh my god, this is bananas. It is, right? It is. Oz says, we need commemorative slain OGL miniatures. I think we do, actually. Yeah, we do. Ralph Hummel says, actually, Critical Role started out on Pathfinder and changed mid-game the D&D, just saying that you can switch RPG systems relatively easily, especially between Pathfinder and D&D. Like, those are the types of, like, those systems can be very easily changed. There was a ton of people I knew who moved their D&D campaign into Pathfinder whenever Pathfinder First Edition came out. So definitely totally possible. Bob says, looking for more for OGL raid 15k person run. Yeah. You think 2 quarters max? So Eric Davis, with a very cynical take, says 2 quarters max before Wizard of the Coast walks back this apology. Oh, I don't know, actually. I think they're going to be a little bit shy on this one. I think they're going to be a little bit shy on this one, honestly. I think they, I don't know. I think they're going to be waiting until, so 2023, right? 2024 is whenever 1D&D is scheduled to come out. I think that we'll see any movement at that stage. B1G Moon, thank you very much for the $5 donation. Says there is a Humble Bundle with 52 books to support the orc. You all should check it out. Guys, there you go. I mean, like, 52 books Humble Bundle. There it is, right? Can I just say, it's absolutely awesome. It's like the Free Peoples of Middle-earth. Right? Like, Wizards of the Coast really put themselves in the spot of Sauron here. Like, I've never seen a company so quickly take to the role of the Dark Lord and quickly become like one D&D to rule them all. And suddenly, you had like the Free Peoples of Middle-earth, the Elves and Man, you know, you had Paizo and Chaosium. You had all these different companies come together, all these smaller companies come together to unite as one, to face off against the Dark Lord Sauron. Someone somewhere screamed for Frodo, right? Like, at some stage, you know that's the case. D&D Shorts, hello there, says, thanks for all your coverage on this discourse. I'm going to bed, so I can't stay for the stream. It's the middle of the night here. I still can't believe we won. No, thank you, D&D Shorts, for all your coverage. I think your coverage has been absolutely fantastic on this one. Got everybody mobilized in a really big way. So I'm happy to hear you've been watching the videos, to be honest. And take the night off, I think. I think you've earned that. I think you've earned it. I still can't believe we won either. I genuinely can't. I am shocked, but it's been absolutely fantastic. So good night to you, D&D Shorts. And thanks a lot. Thanks for stopping by. Ludite Sandy says, I'm so proud of the role-playing game community. Magic, the trading card game players couldn't do this. GW players couldn't do this. I think it might be the level of investment, in terms of money. I think people have a sunk cost in certain systems, like Magic and Games Workshop products, and it's harder for them to, like, resist actively. I don't know, like, is this something that's unique to the role-playing game community? See, I'm not a member of a lot of other stuff. Guys, I gotta be honest, all right? I'm gonna reveal I do this every other stream. I reveal a dark secret. Today's dark secret to be revealed is that I might be a little bit of a nerd. So I'm gonna be honest, most of my hobbies are role-playing games, wargaming, kind of card games, but mostly living card games, which is a trademark term. What the hell? Sorry, I should say collectible card games, and video games. Although less so video games these days. Those are my hobbies, guys. I don't like bike. I'm not like a biker. I'm not like a jogger. I don't go jogging. Yeah, nerd alert. Yeah, so I don't go jogging. Is there an evil biking company at all? Who like did the biking community like rise up against them at any stage? Is this normal? Right? My frame of reference is like I'm just realizing no, I've got no frame of reference to like I don't know, like the knitting community or the cross stitching. I don't know. Like is that the BDS? Okay, well hold up now. No, I'm not a BDSM hobbyist, okay? I'm just a fan, all right? CP Burns maybe says there's still a bunch of corporate swine who will not stop. Justin Anchor, I think you're right. They'll just do OGL 1.3 or GSL 2.0 and 6th edition 1D&D will be a closed-off experience. I think that 1D&D is definitely going to be a closed-off experience. So if we remember, before the whole OGL thing, like I was talking about the monetization of 1D&D and how I think that it's going to be really aggressively monetized. I still think that, guys. There is... Do not be. I'm here like going like woo 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 woo. We're making it. But I'm not like I'm doing a lol. But I'm not saying that we should forget that like when 1D&D comes out, it's gonna be monetized. Like they're not going to walk that element back. They're not going to walk that element back, and we will see. I think we're going to see their virtual tabletop policy get updated, and we're going to see some gnarly stuff in that. But right now, guys, I want to take the win. Can we take the win for tonight? Can we take the win? Can we soak this in? Can we soak in the armistice for like a day? You know, can we just give us a little day, right? For a little day, can we just take this one pushback, right? Like Aaron Rustin says, celebrate the victory, but stay vigilant. 100% agreed. 100% agreed. Jason Karam says, remember they promised backwards compatibility of 5th edition. Do not let them break their promises. Yeah. Book of Erotic Fantasy does indeed count, Zachwiller. Breathe in the rare funk. Yes, it's just like being back at the game store. Master Producer says 1D&D VTT is going to have so many microtransactions. It is, honestly, I'm worried. It will. Freakish Uproar, thank you very much for the £35 donation. That's insane. Thank you very much. Says, they say the spectator sees more of the game. Hope you're good, Discourse. Thank you very much, Freakish Uproar. I really appreciate it. Tell you what, I've got like, my throat is actually coming. I've got a really sore throat today. I did not intend on recording anything today. Yeah, here we are. So. hence my tea, my necessary tea. Thank you very much for the donation, though. I really appreciate it. Joshua, thank you very much for the $5 donation. Says, I would bet they will wait for the orc attention to tone down before trying to touch the OGL again. So it depends on how popular the orc holds. That is sneaky. That is sneaky, Joshua. Yeah, they're like, okay, everybody's moving over to the orc. How about we just wait for everybody to, like, all the news about that to die down, and then we just do it? Right? Because it won't be new and novel anymore, and people won't cover it as much. So, right? Like, that could be the case. Are we gonna see that? Is this, like, some 4D chess that's happening right now? Are they, is that what we're gonna see? Like, are they gonna wait like 6 months and go, haha, now Paizo can't announce the orc again, so therefore we can kind of make these changes, right? Maybe. I hope not, though. I hope not. I really do hope not. God. Daniel Phillips says, it's a great win. That it might not be the final win doesn't change how great this is. Yes, I think you've summarized my opinion on this, Daniel. I think you've summarized my opinion on this. The fact is, I'm still shocked. I'm still surprised that they pushed this, that they actually fell back on this one. I think it's a fantastic change. I don't think we should forget that. But then on the other hand, I don't think we should forget that they moved this. And I also don't think that we should, I also don't think we should forget about all the damage that this has already caused. I think that that's probably my takeaway from the whole thing. Basically, like, dumb idea, annoying that they did it, absolutely destructive, but I'm glad that they've stopped. I'm glad that they have stopped. Scython Nihilis, to your health, everyone. Cheers. Yes, indeed. Chin chin. Stuart Thorpe, reminding us of why we're all here, says, take the win like defeating Sauron in the second age, but don't let your guard down. Hell yeah. Wait, did they defeat Sauron in the second age? All right, okay, here's dark secret number 2, guys. I'm a basic bitch when it comes to Lord of the Rings, guys. I'm a basic bitch. I haven't read the books. Oh my god, there it is. Boom, I'm dropping it. I'm dropping it like it's hot, guys. I'm dropping it like it's hot. As far as I know, there were elves at Helm's Deep. How about that bad boy? Boom. Concurrent viewers drops by 300. I think I just lost a couple of patrons, guys. Yep. For now, they have stopped for now, says Titerator. It's all happening tonight, guys. It's all happening tonight on the stream. Here it is. Oh, chat is not liking it. Guts the Berserker says we need to push back on the censorship style retcons. I don't know, but like, so I don't know, but I honestly, I don't mind the language change, like ancestry and things like that. I don't really care about that. Like, so Pathfinder, for example, has ancestry, and I always like the word folk. I always think, because race to me always felt more like a sci-fi term, right? Like the races. Whereas I think folk is like a fun like folklore-y kind of word. I don't know. I think it's kind of whimsical and kind of like fantasy-esque. Crypto Kev says, need this guest back discourse. Yeah, maybe. Sorry. there were so many descriptions of trees, guys. I can only take so many poems, right? I think it was whenever Tom Bombadil showed up. He was like singing all these tunes. I was like, okay, guys, I gotta take a break here. My like, ever since I got on Twitter, right? Like my attention span has absolutely died. I can't take it anymore. Jason Karam says, I haven't read the book since I was 15, and that's more than your age. Years ago. Yeah, well, fair enough. Okay. Zach really says, Fellowship is all this crap about Hobbits and Tom Bombadil, and while I love those things, I don't blame you. I really love like the setting. I watch God, there's like a channel I watch who does like questions on Lord of the Rings, and he answers them. So I know like a lot of the extended stuff, you know, especially about Saruman, because Saruman and Wormtongue are like my favorite characters. Dingo Dundee, thank you very much for the $10 Australian. Says, good day, Discourse mate. Any win is a good win. Honestly, I'll take it. I started today pretty down. I'm not gonna lie. I started today pretty down. There was some like pretty, I don't know, there was like some news from on like the Warhammer side of things that I was a bit like about, and I was kind of down about it, and then I was just, you know, sometimes you just have like a down day, and then this is like zoomed me right up. Like I'm like back, baby. I'm like, wow, talk about your energy levels. Like goodness me. Like, I did not see this coming. I did not see this coming. Crypto Kev, thank you very much for the $5 donation. Says, as we are all friends here, opening Dark Secrets. I haven't read the books either. Love the films, though. Yes, aha! Oh, there you go. Caught out. The films are fantastic. Honestly, I don't think we're ever going to see something like the Lord of the Rings movies ever again. I hope we will, but I don't know if we ever will. Absolutely fantastic movie. So absolutely fantastic. Tom Bombadil was also in Psychedelics, says Casual Normie. You heard it here first. Although I'm not surprised, honestly. I'm not surprised. Can I say though, I did a video today on other games. Thank you for the follow there, ML Cartha on Twitch, twitch.tv/discoursegames. I've got it all linked up, so if you're following me there, you get seen here. There it is. What was I gonna say? Yes, so I just did a video. I literally released a video today about trying other games. Now the whole OGL thing has happened, and I referenced the OGL in that video, and now it is going to become immediately dated on the day I released it. That's right. It's very frustrating. This content creation business. I tell you, I swear to God, I just can't catch a break. I can't catch a break. Joshua Hutt says, wait, new D&D movie doesn't hold a candle to Lord of the Rings. Look, okay, right, guys. I don't think so. I haven't seen it, but I'm gonna guess no. So the new D&D movie, as far as I have seen, does the whole, you know, oh, we're kind of like the Joss Whedon-esque style of kind of comedy where everything's kind of like tongue-in-cheek and there's no, I don't know, it's like that, everything has to be equipped, you know, they fly now, all that sort of stuff, and that's all fun and games, but I'm kind of a little bit over it, to be honest. I would have preferred, honestly, a more sincere fantasy movie. I would have preferred a movie that was just like actually treated it like Lord of the Rings and was just like, here's a goddamn movie. It's a fantasy movie, and we're not embarrassed by that. Here it is, you know, and I would have been into it. New D&D movie looks kind of meh, honestly, says Greg. Yeah, honestly, I thought the trailer was pretty good. I haven't seen the new movie. Is it out? Like, I didn't think it was out. When does it come out? I don't even know when it comes out. But I haven't, I saw the trailer and I thought it looked okay, but I wasn't, like, super into it. Jess Hunt says, ooh, Discourse, did you manage to grab Aliens and Other Glorious Day in the Corpse yet? For those who don't know, Aliens and Other Glorious Day in the Core is a board game. It's like a board game, war game kind of game. It's got minis and stuff like that, that I've been hunting for years now at this stage. I've been hunting it for years. And I cannot find it. It doesn't exist anymore. And unfortunately, no, I have not found it. I cannot find this board game, and it haunts me. It's like my white whale. I search for it. That and Return to Night of the Zealot, but for the Arkham Horror LCG. These are like my two white wheels. I hunt for these. I lie awake at night picturing them in my head. Here's the funny thing. I have heard, people have told me that the Aliens board game isn't that good. And I believe them that it probably isn't that incredible, but I need it. I don't know why. I just need it. So I'm on the hunt for it, but I just can't find it. Jubo Malseco says, I mean, The Legend of the Vox Machina is probably leagues better than the D&D movie. Would not be opposed to Chris Pine playing D&D sometimes, though. Yeah, I mean, like, look, this is the thing. This is the thing about Vox, right? Matt Mercer, like there's some crazy production values on that sort of stuff. To me, that is more of D&D content, right? I think that with D&D, what they should have made a movie about should have probably been like the setting of like Forgotten Realms or whatever, and like just told a good fantasy story. Like, I think that the whole idea of D&D movie is kind of weird and backwards, because D&D is an activity. It's an activity performed. It's not like just a movie thing. It's not like Warcraft, you know? So it's just wild to me. It should have been like Forgotten Realms, the movie, or whatever, or, you know, like whatever D&D setting you want to do, like Spelljammer or whatever. Thank you very much for the donation there for the $5. Says the Name of the Wind series is a good one. I like better than Lord of the Rings. Woo! Okay, that's pretty hot. It's pretty spicy news, pretty spicy. I've actually never heard of the Name of the Wind. I liked the, if we're talking like book recommendation, I like the, firstly, I'm a big fan of Game of Thrones, although, like, Song of Ice and Fire, I can't recommend that, though, at the minute, because, like, I don't think it's ever going to get finished. But the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie, that's pretty good. That's pretty good fantasy, too. I quite like that. Spelljammer, says your Thor? Hell no. I'm just throwing out the first things that come to mind, okay? I'm just throwing out the settings that come to mind. Okay, so, let's see here. It's a fantasy series based on a D&D campaign, says Master Potato. Okay. So that's the thing, though, right? So here's the deal, right? Here's the wild thing. If you speak to this is like a fundamental difference between like people who play Warhammer and people who play D&D, right? If you speak to someone who plays Warhammer, what they'll talk to you about 9 times out of 10, right? Not everybody, obviously. 9 times out of 10, they'll talk to you about like the Primarchs, about the setting. They'll talk to you about Space Marines, what they think is cool in the setting. They'll talk to you about the Imperium and like the aliens, and they'll be like, "Oh my god, I love Chaos Knights, and they look really cool. And here's like all the stuff that's really neat about the setting, and like Melticons are badass, and like the Imperium's like really insane, right?" That's what they'll talk about. They'll talk about the setting. If you talk to a D&D player, what they'll talk to you about is their goddamn character, and they will not shut up about the character. They go, "Oh yeah, I love my character. My character is so cool. There was this one time we were like in an actual dungeon, and then we found like a bunch of like kobolds, and they were sitting underneath a big rock, and my character ran over and he like kicked the like a bit of a stick that was holding up the rock. It was like a structurally significant stick, and he kicked it over, and then the rock fell down and it crossed like a bunch of kobolds, and then they ran away and they hid in like trenches, and then we had to hunt them through the trenches, and then they like they slowly whittled us down." Like they will tell stories about their character. They will talk about the game that they played. It's not like they have like this insane connection with, for example, the Curse of Strahd, right? That's a really good... So the Curse of Strahd adventure, they will tell the story of what happened in the Curse of Strahd adventure through their character. They'll talk about their character's reaction to things. "Oh, my character was this holy paladin, and he went in, and then he ended up, like, talking with the vampire dude, and, like, because he's, like, secretly a vampire hunter, like, that was really cool, and he had, like, this ownership of this land," right? That's what people talked about whenever you talk to them about their games. It's not like they say, "Oh, Strahd's really cool," and they go on and on and on about Strahd. And this is actually kind of a problem that you find, like, D&D content creators have, right? Because like a lot of them are just doing DM advice because that's like the easiest like kind of content to make. And I know because I'm working on some DM advice myself because I got plenty of it to give. But it's true though, right? It's hard to like talk about the settings. It's hard to talk about the settings because most players only care about what happens at the table with them. I think that's actually something the Wizard of the Coast might have just learned in a big bad way. Yeah, Strahd is pretty cool. I actually haven't played Curse of Strahd. I haven't played Curse of Strahd. I most of my games, so every single D&D game, I think, I've played Rise of Tiamat, and I've played a couple of the others, but most of my D&D games are actually just, like, custom settings and homebrewed settings. Most of my D&D games. It tends to be called Cthulhu are the ones where I play pre-written adventures. Let's see here. Freakish Uproar says, "Being a colossal monster nerd, I can honestly say monster manuals and fiend folios and whatnot was at least 75% of my favorite thing about D&D. That's really cool. That's really cool to know. I actually loved making my own monsters, especially kind of like action monsters that were more based around being interesting kind of combatants rather than being robust mechanical monsters, if you get me. Rather than being like, okay, here's the AC and like really working out the math behind that. Just trying to create engaging monsters that had like active abilities that could, for example, I designed a monster once that I called the Sarcoma that was basically designed around so that slowly spread out across the map. It didn't move, it just spread. Every single turn it would keep moving, and it had a weakness to ice, was its secret weakness. That was a ton of fun, and it would use abilities to lure people closer, and if you ended your turn whilst on the same square as it was really bad for your character. So that was the kind of like monster stuff that I really enjoyed that I honestly don't see come out very often from like the monster manuals or anything. Lord Orion says, "I got the people I play 40k with into it through the TTRPG, so they very much talk about their characters." Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much for the donation there, Lord Orion. I think that people love talking about their characters, honestly. I really do. For good reason. It's because it's the most interesting part. People are in love with their characters. The same way you speak to a DM, they'll tell you about their homebrew world, right? Like, this is the thing. Dungeons and Dragons, role-playing games, they are creative. They're all about being creative and all about creating your own content. And where else do you get that ability? It's so empowering to be able to make your own stuff. Right? To be able to make your own stuff, to be able to create your own story. I find, I have a friend who absolutely adores running games because it is an outlet for their creativity, right? They're not really good at like writing, they're not really good at writing. They don't want to write a novel. They're not very good at, at directing movies. This is what they can do. They can homebrew. They can build worlds. They can build campaigns. They can build contexts for games. And I think that is a very, very valuable thing. Building better worlds. Exactly, J.S. Hunt. Building better worlds. That's what we gotta do. That was the Blob movie, wasn't it? Says Crypto Cat. I've never seen the Blob movie either, guys. I've never seen the Blob movie. RPG rule 1. If the group says the rule is wrong, the rule is wrong. 100% Tater. 100%, right? Everything, all that matters is what happens at the table. That's all that matters. And this is actually something I try to tell DMs this a lot, you know? You're like, you can do all the like planning and stuff in the world, but what happens at the table is what happens. That's what actually matters. So follow the party. Mr. Smith's government class, thank you very much for the $5 donation. Says, don't make us sing Les Miserables again, old man. Dear Wizards of the Coast. Thank you very much for the donation. Yes, that's what it feels like. We're like waving the flag, you know? We're waving the flag. Damn. Yes, thank you very much. Weird A. Parker says, my very first character was a thief named Sparta, 1980 in the fall. Wow, Weird. Why would you play the class that ruined D&D? Why would you do that? Oh, God, I'm only kidding. I'm only joking. But there is an old school argument out there that the thief ruined Dungeons and Dragons because every single class should be doing the things that a thief traditionally does. And I've got a little soft spot in my grognard heart for that argument. DM Toolbox says, hey, we won! I know, right? It's a surprise. I feel like I'm in the trench right now and everyone's looking around being like, peace in our time. I really hope this isn't a Chamberlain situation, though. Good God. Holding the OGL and it clutched between his pale white knuckles, saying peace in our time, only for tomorrow, Wizards of the Coast to go, we're closing D&D forever. Oh, God. That would be awful. I keep my eyes on rogues, as you should, says Zach Wheeler. Stuart Thorpe, Discourse shooting shots. Oh, I got him. Did we win? I hope so. It is good, but is it over, says Troy. It is good, but it is not over. I'm afraid our watch has just begun. We must now be known as the Sentinels of the OGL. We must stand atop the wall and wait for the coming of the Night King, for they will arrive. We must watch for the arrival of one D&D and see what kind of schemes they've got up their sleeves for that. Alan Hughes says it's never over. War never changes. The OGL, it never changes as long as we get our way. Willie Parker says he died chasing some floating coins in a G cube. Hell yeah. Jason Karam says, I would like to see all class have a climb walls, detect noise, move silently, and hide in shadows percentage in OSR. Vigilance is the price we pay for liberty, says Paul. Man, what a day. What an incredible day. So it is funny though, guys. Like I'm sure there's lots of people who kind of got into RPGs and stuff like that through 5th edition. And maybe they're like newer to the hobby and stuff like that, and they've heard like maybe some of the older school players like talking about these crazy moments in time, like when TSR collapsed, right? When Wizards of the Coast kind of bought over D&D, when Pathfinder 1 came out in 4th edition D&D, and things were really spooky there for a while for Wizards of the Coast. The 90s, the rise of World of Darkness, and I'm sure they've heard these stories. Guys, this is going to be one of those stories. The OGL crisis of January 2023 is going to be one of those stories that is going to be spoken about. You're going to hear this referenced a lot. In the coming years, in the next couple of decades, you're going to hear people talk about this. I hope! I hope they don't say, the OGL false flag of 2023 before the big changes happened in February of 2023. I hope they don't say that, right? But I think that we're going to see this mentioned and talked about a lot in the future. This is like one of those historical moments. And you could tell immediately, like with the type of pushback and with the type of community response. This is something that is going to be spoken of for a really long time. This was really existentially not only terrifying for third-party content creators, but I think pretty existentially dangerous for Wizards of the Coast as well. I think that's why maybe they have fallen back so hard and they have decided to capitulate to the community so they've supplicated so widely, you know? Excellent. Just brilliant result. Remembers the OGL scandal. I was there, you know, says Greg Robinette. Yes, exactly, right? DM Toolbox says if they want to do a new license for 6th edition and tank it, that's on them. We have 5th edition forever now. I think that's really important. 5th edition is a good, robust rule set. I think that marries a lot of good, strong mechanics alongside an ability to just simply role play and let the mechanics get out of the way. I think the 5th edition is pretty good, right? It's not like it's 4th edition. So I like love 4th edition or not, but like not a lot of people enjoy it. it, right? It's a pretty divisive setting, our system. 5th edition, however, I think a lot of people are comfy in 5th edition, so I think Wizards are gonna have they're gonna have to pull a lot of stops to get people over to 6th edition. We were talking earlier on whether or not Wizards probably expect everybody to stay on 5th edition or to move over to 6th edition, so they don't really care about 5th edition. But 5th edition is there now, and I think having that option is really important. Freelancer says, too bad 5th edition isn't even that good version of D&D rules. I think it's fine, honestly. I actually liked it. I like 5th edition for what it is. I don't think it's bad. It's not my favorite RPG in the world, by all means. That's probably, can I say Delta Green? I haven't played Delta Green yet. I've played Call of Cthulhu a lot, though. But Delta Green might be my favorite setting. Yeah, like, D&D isn't exactly my favorite game ever, but, like, I don't think it's bad, you know? I think it's bad. I think if you're somebody who enjoys fantasy adventure games, I think that with a kind of more superhero sheen to them, that's a lot more about powers and things like that, I think that 5th edition is pretty good for that. Let me tell you, like, it's not a bad system, right? It's not like Exalted, where I kind of want to play the game Exalted, but then I look at the rule book and I go, no. I'm never, like, you know, I've played so many games of Exalted and I can't do it anymore. I can't handle that combat system anymore. 5th edition doesn't, like, actively prevent me from playing it. Daniel Phillips says, the first RPG character was a human trader in The Enemy Within Warhammer Fantasy roleplay game. Don't remember my first D&D character. I actually do remember it was my first Pathfinder character, and they were an expedition leader. I kept on taking the follower fate, and I had 100 NPCs that were my goons, and I had no other abilities. It was fantastic. CryptoKF says, Delta Green was the correct answer. Thank you very much for the $2 donation. Yeah. Delta Green Pog says, imagine wagons. Exalted says, Cynthia Mullet. Yes, absolutely losing his mind because I'm the first person to have ever mentioned Exalted around him, ever. What? You play Exalted? is the response I get from people whenever I mention those words. Aaron Rustin says, no initiative wheel for you. There was a 4th edition? Asked Mike Lubin. Yeah, there was indeed a 4th edition. In fact, there was a 4th edition VTT. In fact, there was a 4th edition OGL change. In fact, all of this happened before for 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons. We've just zoomed through the timeline. Absolutely. Boyd Battle says, I think 1 D&D is going to be changing going forward. I think they will drop the charade that it's not a new edition and just dive into it. Honestly, I think that anything could happen now. I really do think that anything could happen now. We're like a brave new world, gentlemen. We're like in Wonderland here. Like, this is all so unprecedented. Absolutely fantastic. Very, very unprecedented. I'm genuinely surprised. Callamore says, the real question is, CEO and leaders will be out. We might see a couple of resignations over the next couple of months. We'll see, but I don't think so. Personally. I think this was done to stop the bleeding, honestly. I think this was done to stop the bleeding. They were just like, okay, damage control, do it. Make it happen. We're through the looking glass here, people, says Avi Spectre. Exactly, Avi, exactly. We sit in the treehouse and we're like, could be vampires. Ralph Hummel says Chris Cal should pack up tomorrow. So, guys, Chris Cal obviously was pushing for a lot of the monetization changes, but his philosophy, and I think we should probably acknowledge that it is an ideology. That might be a little bit spicy to say, but it is an ideological perspective that the hobbies should be aggressively monetized in this way. But he is not alone. This is pretty endemic, I would say, to big business at the minute. They want to aggressively monetize every single element because we're reaching a stage where they can't make more money through the traditional means. So now they're trying to find any avenue of monetization whatsoever. And I think we've just been slowly witnessing this happen increasingly to these kind of consumer hobbies. More and more and more and more. It feels like we're getting a worse deal every single time. Prices are going up. Content is getting worse. It sucks, but I think that if Chris Cal were to leave tomorrow, I don't think that it would be kind of fixed, right? I think that this is something that Chris Cox and Cynthia Williams and most of the C-level execs, I think that this is what they want. They want a game that is highly monetized, really aggressively so. They want every single player to be spending hundreds of dollars, and they want DMs to be going, yep, just Dungeons and Dragons, please. More Dungeons and Dragons, and I will pay you hundreds and hundreds for that. That's what they want, right? Like, ultimately, that's what they want. So... Like we've been talking about, we need to keep vigilant. We need to keep an eye out for this, for future changes, for sure. Jason Cameron, thank you very much for the $5 donation. Says we need to keep the pressure on until we know for sure which CC license they will actually choose and they actually release it. So I've just read the initial announcement. I don't know. So I don't know if we've heard anything else since then. I don't think we have though. So yeah. The joy of shareholder capitalism, says Jez Hunt. It's these public companies. I think, honest to God, guys, like, I did not used to believe that. I think it's going public kills companies. I think going public kills them. Because if you look at a company like Paizo, for example, they're a private company. Or even, like, you look at a company like Valve, right? They're a private company, and they have been for the longest time. I think it's whenever a company goes public that they destroy their identity. They absolutely destroy their identity. Crypto Kev with another 10 members donations. Oh my good God. Wow. That is wild. Thank you very much for the gifted memberships. Check out this guy. That's insane. Thank you very much. Wow. That's wild. Thank you. So yes. I think it's whenever companies go public that these changes happen, right? You start to see this move towards these aggressive monetization because they have competing priorities. No longer is it about creating a good game. No longer is it about creating a fun game that people will want to buy, because that's how it should be, right? You just want to make a product that's fun, that you think people will like and get value from, and then you sell the product, right? This is the way it should be done. However, and that can be done when it's a private company, because often you have the passionate people at the top who are people who want to remain in the industry and want to stay in the industry. Whenever a company goes public, that's when you get these, you get these executives, these people whose job is only to maximize profit by any means necessary, and I think that totally kills the culture of a company. You lose the culture, the culture at a company completely. It changes. You get a new culture slowly develop as the people who are passionate about the game kind of leave the topper echelons. That's exactly what happened with D&D, right? Wizards of the Coast, they left Wizards of the Coast, they went and formed Paizo. Public, I honestly, and this is something I'm just starting to learn. When a company goes public, it just kills them. Dingo Dundee, thank you very much for the $5 Australian donation. Says the more you monetize our hobbies, the more they lose their value and fun aspect. And I totally agree. There is a cost. To these aggressive monetization practices. There's people who spend way too much. People who suffer from these, but there's also people who just don't buy in, and it makes the hobby smaller. I just want as big a hobby as possible. I want as many people playing these games as possible. I want people having a good time, right? But whenever you're a public company, that's not your goal. Your goal is just to please shareholders, and there's these competing priorities. Mike Lovin says, I have long said there needs to be a legally enforced separation between investors, shareholders, and day-to-day operation of a company. The problem is the shareholders these days. So this is going to go a little bit. Okay, guys, so bear with me here, right? But the problem with a lot of the shareholder stuff these days is that shareholders are either too small, so they're either individuals like you or me who's bought like a bunch of shares, and we can't hold public companies to account, right? The original idea by public corporate ownership was that public companies would be held to account by their shareholders, right? They would do things that was good for the health of the company, and therefore, right, long-term healthy for the company, which would often be make good product, gets bought by more people, means the customer base grows. Very simple, right? But most shareholders are either small individuals like me or you, and we can't hold Wizards of the Coast to account. We just have no power to do so. We've only got a couple of shares. Or there are these massive fund groups like pension funds who genuinely have no interest in the actual business, have no interest in the hobby, and cannot hold these companies to account because they have no idea about it whatsoever. So I think that's the big problem. It honestly is. I don't think the shareholders can hold companies to account, and I think companies just blindly seek out any way of making the number go up. This line go up. That's all they want. Eric Rustin says shareholders can sue companies for not maximizing profits. That's true, but they have a responsibility for long-term growth, right? And that's actually an extremely subjective position. So long-term growth could be lots of stuff because a lot of it's speculative. For example, I think I think there is a really good argument that Games Workshop should stop focusing so much of their efforts on Space Marines, because I think it's actually hurting their long-term growth to do so, because I think that they're just doubling down on the existing player base instead of trying to expand. Maybe put more Eldar models out there, because it would actually grow the player base. There's people who would be like, oh, Eldar are cool, and they would buy into Eldar. So I think that you could argue, therefore, that long-term growth, it's better to focus on the lesser loved, like Xenos factions, for example. But that's like a highly subjective statement, right? That's very, very subjective. Satisfaction says, long-term growth, line goes up. Exactly, right? Give more orc boys. Match potato, agreed. Give more orc boys. Casual Normie says, the economy can't handle this growth. We won't grow forever. No, we will not. No, we will not. But there we go. I'm shocked. I'm shocked that Wizards have actually backed down. I wonder what... So, did anything happen today that I missed? Was there something that, like, brought it on? I suspect that it was the D&D Beyond subscription cancellations. I really do. They need to focus more on the Necron lore and stories, in my opinion, says Alan. Yeah. Taylor Raider says, GW needs to compete with third party, not bully them, improve the quality of the models and balance the screwed up massive game. Exactly, Taylor Raider. Exactly. There's a lot of room for improvement, but they're not doing that. They're not doing that. Layoffs at Hasbro. Well, yeah, there's layoffs at Hasbro yesterday. Did they have a big strop drop yesterday, Quothcraft? Did they? I thought it was looking kind of steady. Surprisingly enough, but yeah, there was a big layoffs. I don't know whether or not these two things are linked. So Hasbro got publicly shamed by a major investor, says Greg. I did see that, but yeah, execs might have been like, could have been me, says Double Crit Feel. Maybe they were like, okay, walk it back, people. This is getting real now. This is getting real. Oh, it dropped 9%, D Campbell. Okay. I think once it went as far as the story at NPR, they took notice, says Miss Walker. Yeah, so this was definitely a story that got picked up by the mainstream. It wasn't like it was just like D&D influencers kind of being like, oh, this is like really bad for the game. Like this went out to mainstream media, press outlets, and it made a big impact, right? I guess there is a downside to being talked about at the country club and the cocktail parties. Chris Cox is now discovering that actually there is a downside to being so well known, and that's whenever the health of your company is at stake. There are a lot of people who start the tongue start a wagon. So that's actually pretty interesting, right? Because if Games Workshop were to make like a big mess, you wouldn't see it kind of talked about as much. You might see like a BBC article would probably be like the most you would see, right? But you wouldn't see like a ton of talk about it. But with Dungeons and Dragons, it's like, whoa, Dungeons and Dragons is blowing up. It's gonna die. There's a big movie coming out. It's gonna die. And like, whoa, everybody was freaking out. So yeah, CNBC covered it. There we go. Like I said, shareholders are a company's real customers, not us, says Freaky Shop Roar. Yeah, so, I mean, definitely feels like there could have been a connection for sure. I think that it built and built and built. I think it built and built and built. They definitely were losing a ton of goodwill. And unlike Games Workshop, Wizards of the Coast seemed to care about the goodwill of their audience. So, yeah, I'm still in shock, guys. I'm still shocked. I'm still positively shocked. It's absolutely wild. I can't believe it. I can't believe Ding Dong Witch is dead moment. Yes, it is the Ant King. It is a Ding Dong Witch is dead moment. It really is. Like, you know, I mean, we gotta come back with our spears tomorrow and kind of stand sentry atop the wall and make sure that Night King doesn't return. But for now, I think we can take the day off. The Dune movie looked too modern, nothing like an epic fantasy, says Joshua Thomas. Yeah, there's like a lack of sincerity in movies these days, I think. And that kind of sucks in a lot of ways because I would like to see a sincere fantasy, but it doesn't seem to be happening. Everything's gotta be a comedy. AV Factor says, recap the development for those of us coming in late. So what has happened is Wizards of the Coast have announced that they are walking back the OGL changes. They're reverting back from OGL 1.2 to OGL 1.0A. So we're kind of time warping back. They're like, sorry, our bad. We're going to walk it back because the feedback was so universally against the 1.2 changes. The feedback was so universally against it, they have decided to walk it back. Not only that, though, but they're opening up a bunch more stuff into the systems reference document, and that's being opened up to Creative Commons, therefore. And yeah, so that's pretty surprising, honestly. So it's victory, guys. We're seeing the OGL changes have been totally reversed. Wizards of the Coast have done a little bit of a mea culpa. Absolutely insane news. Yes, let's do the time warp again. Exactly, Finch. Awesome. Doomsday Mortis says, with the coast realize we have teeth and aren't afraid to use them. Honestly, yeah. So I think the community coming together was intense. I think that other rival companies, so Paizo, Chaosium, Free Leagues, right? All these different companies kind of coming out and being like, hey guys, we also do games. And people actually were like, okay, I like the sound of that. Let me check that out, right? Huge advertising for all these other companies. I think that was massive as well. I think the D&D subscription drops was huge. I think that was huge because they lost tens of thousands. They lost tens of thousands of dollars in like a couple of days. That's really bad. Imagine being the guy in charge. When that happens, you'd spit out your tea. I was going to do it, but like, I mean, there's a lot of electrical stuff here, so I can't spit it out. But you'd be like, we just lost $10,000, guys. What the hell? Right? There's like monthly recurring revenue streams. And here's the thing about monthly recurring revenue streams. These companies, they rely on inertia from the subscribers to not change things, right? They hope you just forget about it. But yeah. CryptoKev says, real time, dollar disappearing sea level, going to be watching that. Yeah. Titerator says, they lost millions. All right, eat my bowler. Maybe. I don't know, right, is the answer. Like, I have no idea, but I'm not. It's kind of like, what do you count, right? Is it just D&D subscriptions? Or is it also lost seals? Like, how many people here are going to be buying Pathfinder, discovering a new game, and never buying D&D stuff again? Like, there's going to be more of that than you think, because that happened during 4th edition. If you talk to people who were playing Dungeons & Dragons before 4th edition and had never, lots of them now play a variety of games. Like, they won't just buy 5th edition stuff. And that was kind of like a consciousness raising moment for a lot of people whenever 4th edition came out. And I think what we've witnessed with the OGL scandal is another consciousness raising moment amongst the more kind of casual player base of RPGs. A lot of people who had only ever heard about 5th edition or who only had interest in 5th edition finally got the impetus to try another game. And that's massive. That's actually huge. So one of the hardest things to do as a kind of company that's competing with a bigger company, right? And I see this for war games, and it's same is true for RPGs. One of the hardest things is getting your foot in the door. It's the exposure. It's trying to get people to find out about your game at all. It really is. It's really hard to get people to find out about your game and to be interested in playing your game. And what Wizards of the Coast did, they just handed this golden opportunity to all these companies. And suddenly you see the D&D player base are like, as a community, as a group, as a collective, are saying, I fancy trying some of that Pathfinder, actually. And boom, boom, like that's disastrous. That's disastrous for Wizards of the Coast, right? Like that's nightmarish. That's like, no, don't do that. Don't play a different game. What's going on? But buy our next supplement. What the hell, guys? And yeah, like that's crazy. We got a movie coming up. What the hell? What are you doing playing Pathfinder for? Yeah. The Velcro of TTRPG, says Alan Hughes. D&D is the Velcro. Exactly, right? It really, really is. You can imagine your mom. For some of us, maybe that's harder than others, but you can imagine your mom coming into the room being like, turn off the D&Ds. All right? Pause your D&Ds. Dinner's ready. Mom, it doesn't work like that. You can't pause the game. There's 5 other people here at the table. Just pause it. Your dinner's ready. Right? It's you could be playing Call of Cthulhu, and your mom's like, turn off the D&Ds. Right? It's the Velcro. It's the Nintendos. It really is. But what Wizards of the Coast did was, no, look, actually, there's other games too. That's what they did. They said, look, there's other games. Go check them out. And everybody was like, okay, I guess I'll check them out. And now they're like, uh-oh. They tried to tighten their grip. And it was the classic Empire. The Rebel Alliance was correct, right? The more you squeeze your grip, the more stars that will fall through your fingers. It really will. Dingo Dundee says, sometimes the Force is with us. Exactly. Sometimes the Force is with us. This really does feel like a Death Star moment, guys. This really does feel like a Death Star moment. Like, bang, kaboom, They might be building a second one and a sequel, but for now, let's all celebrate that it blew up, Let's all celebrate that it blew up. Daniel Phil says, my dad would so say something like that. Yeah, that was my life in the early 2000s. Playing online games. Just pause it! Uh, Titerator says it would have to be called Cthulhu and I'd need a Ouija board. Paizo sold out of 8 months of Pathfinder 2 stock in 2 weeks, says Boy Battles. Yeah, we were talking about that earlier. Yeah, they sold out of like 8 months worth. I mean, in fairness, I gotta be honest, there are a couple of companies out there, as much as there was tons of companies that got really hurt badly, but there are a couple of companies out there that are like, ooh, that was their vibe. That was the vibe, I'm sure. The moment this happened, they were like, oh, baby, it's time. I bet Paizo were like, oh, what's that? What's that? Is that D&D 4th edition? The Ghost of arriving? Rattling some chains? Is it here? Is it now? Yes, it is, baby. Like, they were very quick to roll that orc out. They were like, boom, immediately. They were like, oh, here and there, like swimwear. Here we go. And like, very good, you know, because they offered an element of stability at a time whenever the community really needed it. But they did, like, I mean, it worked out for them, definitely. Because I think there's going to be tons more people playing Pathfinder in February than there was in December, right? Miss Walker says, do you think they will walk back? Do you think the walk back will recoup some of the people leaving or damage already done? Silver Lining, other TTRPGs getting more attention now. What a time to be alive. So here's the deal, right? I think amongst the community, I think a lot of people will be very quick to forgive Wizards of the Coast. I think a lot of people will go back to Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, right? I think that any long-term, like, actual destruction of Wizards of the Coast and, like, a ruin of Dungeons & Dragons has probably been averted with this change. Because I think you're going to get a big narrative now of people being like, huzzah, good on Wizards of the Coast for changing things, for walking this back, for apologizing, for admitting they were wrong, and good job them to do so. It takes a bigger man. You know, they've washed their hands of it now. Let's all let bygones be bygones and move on. I think there's going to be a lot of people who are saying that, I think that that's going to be a big reaction, a large proportion of the community. But I also think there's probably going to be a proportion of the community like, never, nope, done with D&D forever now. But whatever, right? So I think that that's going to be kind of like the kind of major response of the community. That's amongst the player base, right? But amongst third-party creators, though, I think that the kind of the walk back is kind of too little, too late, right? Well, it's not too little. It's enough, but too late. I think it's too late, basically, because firstly, a lot of them have already begun working on divesting themselves from the OGL. They just have. They've already started to work on that. They're moving forward with the orc license. That's not going to stop them from going forward with the OGL as well, by the way. But I think a lot of them were burned majorly by this change and will basically, like, the bridges are burned. I don't think they will go back. Now, that said, I think there will also be a bunch of people who are just like, you know what? Like, there is a good reason to work within the OGL. It's not going to ever get deauthorized. It's safer now. Bada bing, bada boom. Let's go. I think that's definitely going to be the case. Certainly, any sort of like pushback or like unification of the community against Wizards of the Coast has basically been undercut, right? Undercut because the main drive that was getting everybody together was basically the fact that third-party content creators were getting absolutely screwed, and that the RPG hobby was getting worse as a result. And this has essentially walked it back. I hope that people do remember, and this does form a lesson, and that people remember this going forward. I really hope that's the case. Long term, we'll see. Basically, my thoughts are is that as time goes on, kind of time heals all wounds. I think people will slowly begin to forgive Wizards just the way that they forgave them for 4th edition D&D stuff, and as leadership changes and corporate things change. However, I don't know if Wizards are going to give us the chance to, because I think in a year's time we're going to see some pretty nefarious monetization changes. I really do. I don't think that this has changed anything about the monetization of 1D&D. I think that that's still all going to happen. So, you know, hold the phone, but I want to celebrate tonight, you know? I want to celebrate tonight. Ludite Sandy says, 2 notes of caution. Wizards of the Coast just sacked 15% of their staff. The VTT stuff still looks like it's going ahead, so roll 20 fantasy grounds are still at risk. And you know what? Damn, you know, like, there's a very important point there. Was the VTT stuff more important to them? I think so. So I had a video scripted to talk about this, and maybe I'll still be putting it out. But the virtual tabletop stuff So they basically had stopped explicitly covering virtual tabletops in the OGL under the new one, right? And I think whatever OGL they put forward for 1D&D, I think that will still be the case. Virtual tabletops are going to be covered by the virtual tabletop policy, right? And that is the case. The virtual tabletop stuff is really, really important because that is where Wizards of the Coast plan on monetizing users, I suspect. Really, really aggressively monetizing them. So they can walk back the OGL content and get a big win. They can win back a lot of people and leave the virtual tabletop policy in place. And because the OGL became what we would call is like the icon, the rallying call, the big flag that we all rallied around was the OGL. Everyone's gonna be like, okay, right, now we go home. And the virtual tabletop stuff is just gonna be kind of undercut, right? Any sort of activism from the community is gonna be totally undercut surrounding the virtual tabletop policy. And the virtual tabletop policy is really bad, you guys. It prevents things like Foundry VTT, for example, from putting like spell effects in, right? And there's like a lot of elements of the virtual tabletop policy that is really, really bad. And if they're not walking that back, then that's a big, big problem. Because that's where they're going to really aggressively monetize people. Daniel Phillips says, VTT was their main aim, paid subscriptions on the big money spinner. It is. It is, because the paid subscriptions are how they monetize their players, as opposed to just DMs, right? Like one DM might just buy the books and have the books and everybody shares it at the table. Traditionally, that's how it goes at my table. And we just all happen to be DMs. Right? Yeah, no spell effects or animations in the VTT policy, says Master Potato. Yeah, exactly. And so you had your DMs do that, but with one D&D and D&D Beyond, the plan is to really rinse players and get cash out of them, right? A player who pays $7 a month is like 7 kajillion times more valuable than somebody who doesn't pay anything, right? Like $7 a month is like an infinite amount of money better than $0. Like infinite amount, like infinite. There's no percentage you could give it. It's just like it's like the best in the world, right? It's money from nothing. It's like bread from air, you know. Standing by, Red Leader. But let's see what they really do, says Double Crit Fail. Yeah, so I'm waiting to see, but the VTT stuff, I'm going to need to think about that a lot more. I'm sure he says the OGL stuff was hurting the VTT because they need to bring their younger audience along with them to the virtual world. Yeah, they do. They do. They need to bring that big audience that got in over COVID. That huge audience got in over COVID and off the back of, right, there's been like a confluence of factors that have gotten the community to be really big. There was the COVID, obviously, but then there was also Critical Role. But then on top of that, there was also Stranger Things as well. People got really into that as well. So this is like created this kind of confluence of factors that have gotten people into D&D. And that massive kind of more casual audience, I would say, or I mean, there's lots of hardcore people there too, but generally speaking, broad base of players, all of them are being alienated by the OGL changes. So this is going to sweep them back in. This is going to catch them all again, bring them back into the fold. Unfortunately, what that does mean, though, is that maybe this virtual tabletop policy no one will be like, no one will care about it anymore, because all the headlines are going to be like, OGL change is going to be Wizards of the Coast just gave up. Irresponsible titles like that. 6th edition is going to be drowned in new licenses, says Crypto Kev. Maybe. I just hope that people play some Pathfinder and some Call of Cthulhu and some other games, right? I hope that people will just play some more games. Ludite says, I started D&D in 1978, played D&D, AD&D 2 2nd edition, D&D 3rd edition, D&D 4th edition, D&D 5th edition. I will not go anywhere near one D&D. As long as I can play 5th edition Roll20, I'm set. Wizards of the Coast have lost me as a customer. I think that's totally fair play. The thing is, I actually don't like virtual tabletops. I just don't. Like, I like playing around a table. And I know that's obviously a very privileged position because I have like a steady, active group that I can play games with. And so therefore, I don't have to play via virtual tabletops. I don't like playing in virtual tabletops. I just don't enjoy it. And so a lot of the 1D&D stuff that I'm criticizing is honestly stuff that I'm not going to get affected by too much, right? Because I'm gonna nope out of that stuff. But my problem is that I think it's actively ruining the RPG hobby, or it will actively ruin the RPG hobby. But that is a battle for another day. Honestly, I think I'll be taking tonight off. I'll be laying down the spear tonight. DDIS 29 says, I have no interest in one D&D. I've never been a hardcore official rules only. I started with a homebrew system and always have done things the way I think they should run. Honestly, I think that there's a lot of people. I think actually most people probably play some level of homebrew of D&D, if only because they don't get the rules right. Like they don't read the rule book like 100%. They don't know everything because it's a pretty complicated system, and they'll let players do stuff that maybe there's no actions for, right? Because that's like the beauty of the game. It's not like an AI DM. It's a brain. It's a human brain in a jar, and well, in a body or whatever. But we'll see. You know, time will tell. It's a human body brain, and they're able to like actually make decisions on the fly and be like, okay, we're gonna do it this way, actually, because I fancy it. Hello there, Daniel. Okay, how's it going? Master Producer says, I've seen rule purists, their tables make me shudder. I've never played a game with a rule purist. Actually, I tell a lie. I have played a GURPS game with a rule purist. Let me tell you, that is an experience and a half. Someone who doesn't pick and choose all the different rules in GURPS and just applies them all. Not a great game. Starts D&D, chucks out rulebooks. It's great. Yeah, no, but most people do. Most people actually do chuck out D&D. Most people don't play by the full rules, I think. Most people are kind of like, roll D20, and if the number sounds high enough, I'll give you it. That's not what Paul says. You can sign an OGL 1.2 or D&D Beyond TOS that say you can't create a VTT. They'll almost certainly put it in. They will very likely seek to consign and constrain and control the virtual tabletop space because that's where they see all the money as. Books are one thing, but books have like manufacturing costs. Books cost a lot of money. Virtual content, however, woo-hoo-hoo! Oh baby, it's cheap to make. Oh, virtual content is cheap to make. Oh, compared to like actually manufacturing products and selling them, virtual content is really cheap to make. It gets to a stage where you're just cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. Oh, baby. And they're going to. And they can control it. They can keep you in their ecosystem. They can bring in login bonuses and stuff like that. Oh, it's going to be a nightmare. Anyway, I've done videos on this, and I will likely do more future videos on it for sure. It's kind of funny, though, because I started up my D&D channel, my role-playing game channel, right? I started up, it was called Dungeons and Discourse, and I wanted it to be a kind of fun little channel where I talk about, like, DM advice, and I talk about, like, you know, running games, and you know, how to have a little bit of fun. And then the whole OGL thing came out, and it was just like, oh god, this is awful. So then all my content now is like OGL content. And I'm like, god damn, this is meant to be like a little fun channel, you know? It became a very, very sad, angry channel. Wizard of the Coast. I won't even though Wizard of the Coast has surrendered, says Nadine Marcus. I think that there is definitely, I think you could describe this as a capitulation. For sure. Miss Walker says, I kind of understand what it was about Stranger Things that motivated so many people to play D&D. Am I missing something? So there was like a nostalgia factor. Like there's a word for it. I can't remember what it was. It was probably in German. There's a word for this, but nostalgia that you've never experienced, right? There's a nostalgia in Stranger Things for things that you might not have experienced, right? You might not have played D&D. You might have been born in like 2001, and you're feeling like nostalgia for Dungeons and Dragons, right? Because the entire show was kind of nostalgia bait, right? So there's that element. So people wanted to do that, but also they made it look fun. You know, they made it look fun. It's not like in the same way that whenever I watched Fear of Girls in like 2008, that made D&D look fun. We're going deep in the references today, people. We're going deep in the references today. But it made it look fun. And there was like a little resurgence, like 80s stuff, and like D&D got kind of caught up in that kind of cultural thing as well. Quote Crowd, thank you very much for the £5 donation. Says, is it too tinfoil to hat to think the third-party sections were a lightning rod while the slips the VT stuff in because the bigger pop than expected? I think that is a little tinfoil hatty. So firstly, thanks very much for the donation. But you are mad. You're utterly insane. No. Yeah, I think that probably is a little bit tinfoil hatty. I honestly, so I'm not a big subscriber. So generally, whenever companies say things, I usually just take them at their word because more often than not, they are just being pretty honest because like they don't really care to lie. Right? The only times I think they're really lying is whenever they frame things in certain ways, or they say stuff like, we just cared about the community. No, like, you cared about the money. But in any case, I usually believe them especially when they're talking to shareholders. So I don't think that this was like a lightning rod. I think the OGL changes were pretty insidious. So the OGL changes were made, and they were sent to third-party content creators, and they were expected to sign those documents. I don't think that was like, that wasn't like done as a kind of like super Trojan horse to try and like trick the community into like going after that while they snuck the virtual tabletop stuff in. I think both of them are just like really insidious. Like they reflect what Wizards of the Coast want. Like they are just documents that Wizards of the Coast want to implement. I think it's as simple as that. Both of them were. And the OGL thing, everybody was talking about OGL. So they've changed those. That was what the feedback says. Basically, change that. We hate it. So they've changed it. The virtual tabletop stuff, though, I think has gone under the radar a bit more. And I do think that the virtual tabletop, and so therefore they're keeping the virtual tabletop things. I think you would need like a similar outcry. But I don't think you're going to get it because Paizo Chaosium, right? These competitors, they were quick to be like, okay, boom, we're gonna bring out the Orc, we're gonna bring out Free Leagues, we're gonna bring out the Black Flag license, I think they called it. We're gonna bring out all our licenses, and everyone was like, okay, rallying behind these other companies. However, with virtual tabletop systems, I think it's only Foundry VTT who don't have an existing agreement with Wizards of the Coast, right? They're the only ones. Roll20 has an existing agreement with Wizards of the Coast, which means there is a license there. So they're going to be caught by the new policy, but they've already got prior existing contractual relationship with Wizards of the Coast, and they know that it would be pretty much like suicide financially for them if they were to turn on Wizards of the Coast. So in a lot of ways, they're kind of in a similar position where, if you recall, Matt Mercer and Critical Role's position on the whole OGL change was they had to be very careful in how they critiqued Wizards of the Coast because they have contractual agreements and NDAs that they have signed, so they have to be really careful in how they talk about it. And Roll20 is in a very, very similar position. Theodore says, I think we'll let the VTT die for now, but put out a new VTT license. Project Blackfly doesn't get a pirate book in the future. I will riot, says Master Potato. Yeah, there has to be, right? You are old school, Williams. Troy Williams says, I've been playing D&D from 83 to 2023. I'm old school. You are old school. Non-disparagement clause. Yeah, exactly, Tater Raider. I mean, like, most NDAs will have some element of a non-disparagement clause. Alan Hughes says, in regards to the leaks, when they first came out, I think lawyer channels hearing about it and reporting their thoughts on it made a huge difference. I agree, Alan Hughes. If you recall, I think one of the first people to break it was the rules lawyer. I think the rules lawyer broke it out. It turns out, right? So it turns out that in a hobby like RPG hobbies, where there's a lot of like reading rule books and getting and understanding rules and systems and how they govern behavior, it turns out there's a lot of lawyers that play those games. Surprise, surprise. And yeah, so I think that there was a lot of coverage, a lot of legal coverage. Obviously, Roll for Combat as well. They got like lawyers on and we're doing live streams and stuff. I think the coverage was really, really fantastic. I think honestly, there is something to be said for these content creators who maybe whose existence isn't predicated on basically just existing to. I'm trying to think of a nice way to say this. Basically give Wizards of the Coast a sponge bath every single time they do something. So you see this in a lot of like hobbies where all the content creators need to be on the good side of the major companies within it because they're like the only game in town and you'll totally alienate those companies. Like, or you'll totally alienate your audience. So for example, like this might surprise you guys. Whenever I make content that's critical at all about Games Workshop, even in the most minor way, I get a lot of abuse, I guess, is the only way to put it, right? I get a lot of very mean stuff said to me. And what that does, though, is that has a chilling effect on content creators, right? Content creators, and I guarantee you this right now, in Wargaming and Warhammer and stuff like that, there are content creators who are much more critical of Games Workshop and Warhammer than they are publicly. So in private, they are much more critical. And the reason for this is that actually a lot of people don't want to be seen as negative, okay? This is like a big thing. And this actually happens. I don't think this happens as much in the RPG community. Because in the RPG community, I think it's just a bigger, more diverse community. And I think that therefore people are more willing to like talk and give their opinions like that pretty earnestly. Titerator says, Legas mean things on the internet. Yes, exactly, right? To be honest, I think that there was a lot of critical voices about the changes. A lot of people, so for example, I think the rules lawyer did a really good job of breaking down the OGL and what it meant and what these changes meant and really laying into them. But you got to remember, the rules lawyer is a Pathfinder channel. All right, rules lawyer. Well, he has a bias here, people. He's a big fan of Pathfinder. So obviously, you know, it works out for him if Pathfinder gets a ton of new people coming into the game. Of course it does. Right? So he's more able to like criticize them. But that said, okay, that said, I'm talking stream of consciousness here, people. But that said, I suppose like D&D shorts obviously came out, was very critical. Jenny D was very critical. Dungeon Dudes very critical. Like there was a lot of big content creators who were what you would call mostly Dungeons and Dragons content, were very, very critical of this. And I guess it's because this was extremely bad. Like it's especially bad. But the community allowed them to be so. Right, the community rallied around content creators as well in a big way, and we're really sounding the horn. Like I think it's the audience ultimately who dictate what kind of like content gets made for like hobbies and for games and things like that. And I think that the D&D community, the RPG community, were ready to hear that Wizard of the Coast were doing something bad, and we're ready to pick up the pitchforks and torches. Sometimes angry mobs can be a force for good. I guess. Yeah. Stuart Thorpe says, Magnum, I love live. I love Legal, but his vid wasn't a deep dive. I totally agree. So I didn't actually watch the Legal video. Mostly because I heard the gist of it and I was like, I can't do it. I can't watch it. I don't want to watch it because I do like Legal, but I think that he completely misunderstood the kind of RPG market and the RPG context, right? Because from what I understand, now this is from my secondhand knowledge because I just haven't gotten around to watching it. From what I understand, his argument is that this could all be put under just Creative Commons, right? That essentially you cannot copyright game mechanics, so the OGL isn't necessary. And I heard a lot of people actually say this at the beginning of like the OGL crisis. A lot of people saying that like, oh, you don't need the OGL. The OGL is a big trick. And in a lot of ways, that's kind of true, but it's also not, right? Because it's really necessary for third parties to have peace of mind. Like I think there's a massive like commercial reason why the OGL is great for third-party content creators. Unstoppable Paul says Legal's vibe was a little unaware of the context for sure. Rampler says Legal was way off the mark. Yeah. Command Line Cody says I noticed a distinct lack of criticism of 40k boarding actions by most YouTube channels. Lots of praise, little mention of the downsides. Yeah. Command Line Cody. Yeah. You know. Most people are just like, tons of really awesome models. Bye-bye. Is like the tends to be. I'm just not. Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to belabor that point because I could be here for a while. But I'll be ill spoken of in the community. Luddite70 says the problem with the big companies is that they have a big bad news ceiling. Senior people never hear the bad news or criticism from their internal power structures and people. Yeah, I think that's honestly true. I've been a part of like big meetings with big people at like higher levels of big companies, and people are like, that's the way it goes. It's just all a bunch of yes men going, yep, yeah, it's good news. It's your senior guys, they don't often get fed a lot of feedback through the pipeline of the company, because nobody wants to be the person to deliver bad news. Do you have an opinion on Border Patrol and Stubble Paul? Yes, I do, and I actually have released some content on the channel about that, so you can check that out. I have some big opinions on it. Doc Later, opinions that did not make me friends. Doc Later says, the whole OGL felt like the first time I played D&D, I had colored class forced on me, told to do my job, and healed the real players. Oh, and watched the chaos of 3 GMs, I heard 3 colors, and 20 or so players? What? God, Doc Letter. So basically what you're describing is the OGL feel was essentially the worst game of Dungeons and Dragons ever. The idea of being told to be a cleric and then forced to like play game, like heal the real players is like insane. It's absolutely insane to me. Absolutely insane. Sweet spot for Warhammer 40k was 6th edition. I'm really partial to 5th. 4th edition, my friends. 4th edition. It's always the one that you start with. That's always your first love. Okay, so guys, the high, I'm starting to come down a little bit. I'm starting to come down from the sugar rush, wow. Thanks very much for joining me today, guys. This was actually a completely impromptu stream, but with absolutely incredible results. Holy Lord! Wizard of the Coast just gave up. The OGL scandal is kind of over for now. Keep thy spear, Sentry, for it may have use in future. But for now, I think, yeah. Sean Vieira says, I'm amused that Wizard of the Coast think that VTTs are a cash cow. Most people are using Roll20 for free. They are, but then you can get like the power users who will subscribe, and I think that they can incentivize people. Like, you see, knowledge is power, right? Because then once you have the player base like on your platform, you can begin to monetize them, and you can start separating the whales from the minnows. Is the thing. So I think it's a savvy business move, honestly. But I think what is a savvy business move isn't necessarily good for the hobby overall. But thank you so much for joining me today, guys. Thank you so much. You guys have been great. Well done. Everybody take a moment to pat yourselves on the back. Have a beer, you know, if that's your poison of choice. Or gin. Have some gin. And thanks everybody. I really I think it's fantastic, honestly. I think that this is like a really big win. And as much as there's been problems and issues and there's going to be future problems going forward, I think this is a massive win. So enjoy it, you know. Thank you so much, guys, and have a great weekend. Have an absolutely fantastic weekend. Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me, and savor this moment, because wins like this don't happen very often. They really do not. As someone who has been covering Warhammer for like a really long time, they don't happen this often, guys. They don't happen ever. So thank you very much, and I hope you all have an absolutely lovely weekend, and I'll see you all next time. And if you do like RPG content, by the way, Dungeons and Discourse, check it out on YouTube. I'll catch y'all next time. Bye bye. Oh, okay.